real Nigella Wilson, and this is not my home. It's a production studio that I rented to do it. I live in a hole in the ground. Do not Hassan fight me, and many of us in the country. I wrote quite a few drafts of this script, making a cake and talking about the philosophy of food, and they were all fine. But about a week before filming, I realized that in every draft, the episode always ended when the cake was done. I never actually ate any of it. And I realized I was afraid to be seen on camera eating a slice of cake. And it hit me like a truck. Jesus. This video is not about food. It's not just about food. It's about phobia and beauty standards and shame and womanhood and eating disorders and cosmetic surgery, and ultimately it's about philosophy of the mind. And I thought this is probably going to be really very hard for me, that this episode is going to end with me eating this goddamn slice of cake. The first thing we're going to do is wash our hands until they are squeaky clean, and then let's take a look at our ingredients. We have butter, caster sugar, 2 lemons, elderflower, 3 eggs, granulated sugar, flour, baking powder, salt, a cultural history of dieting, ground almonds, and poppy seeds. The poppy seeds are my own tradition. You don't mind, do you know, Jenna? I'm going to start off by mixing our dry ingredients, and we'll get to the sweet stuff in it. Philosophers distinguish between objects, like this recipe book, and subjects, people like me, and you, and Nigella. And they wonder what the difference really is between the two. What does it mean to be a subject? What does it mean to treat a subject as if she were an object? And it turns out that food can tell us a lot. The English philosopher John Locke said that when people are born, we are totally blank slates. Tabula rasa for any ancient Romans in the audience. And over time, we experience the world. We experience this and that. And that's when we get all our ideas and concepts from. I'm giving Locke credit for this idea today, even though similar things were said earlier by the medieval Islamic philosopher Avicenna. The idea that knowledge has to come from experience is called empiricism, and we can apply it to knowledge of the subject of this art. The Scottish philosopher David Hume examined all his perceptions of sweet and salty, sour and bitter, and found that he could never have an experience just of art. When I enter most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other, of heat or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. I may venture to affirm of the rest of mankind that they are nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, which I suppose is quite intuitive. Just me personally, I find it difficult to imagine a subject who has no perceptions at all, not a single point of view. That's like being dead, isn't it? In which case, there isn't a subject there at all. But at the same time, it is strange to imagine a bunch of perceptions floating around, nobody having. The delicious smell of Hume's empiricism wafted across the sea to Prussia, where it was nosed by Immanuel Kant, very much from their inherent philosophy. And he said, the base is good, but I think we could have done better on this challenge here. Kant said, oh, you think the subject is a blank slate? You think that you start out empty? Well, perhaps we do, but you still started with the goal. Hume was right that we can't look inside ourselves and experience the stuff, but that's only because it would be like trying to put the bowl inside the bowl, or trying to look at the back of your own eyes. Whatever the subject is in itself, we can never know it, but it is in fact the logical precondition for experience. Kant went on to say that the subject can give itself rules. He actually thought that's why morality is so motivating for us, because we give the rules to ourselves. An example might be dieting. When you diet, nobody twists your arm. You impose the restrictions on yourself. I remember a few years ago when I got into drama school, I got my acceptance letter. I was suddenly seized by the idea that I was too fat to be an actor, which is ridiculous. There are actors of all different body types, and also I wasn't especially fine. But I was raised in the late 90s and 2000s at the peak of the moral tide about obesity. And so I was really captivated by this fear. And I went on a crash diet and I lost between a quarter and a third of my body weight in the system. I got unhealthy skin, unhealthy fat, and I felt wow, I was cold and tired all the time. And it actually hurt to sit down for one period because I had no abs. And then when I was at drama school, a friend of mine who was a trainer invited me to come to the gym, and I found a new way to discipline and persecute myself, which was getting up at 5 a.m. every day and going to the gym and getting deep. The philosopher Simon Critchley thinks that the subject is in two pieces. There's the bit that you experience, and then there's your ideal self, the self that you feel you should be. I'm giving Critchley credit for this idea here, even though, as he acknowledges, similar things were said earlier by French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. According to Critchley, your ideal self is the source of your conscience, but it's also your internal critic. So Kant said we can give ourselves rules, and Critchley said, yeah, but the ideal self doesn't just give us the good rules and morality, it gives us rules, good and bad. And whereas Kant thought we can live according to the moral rules we give ourselves if we formulate them correctly, Critchley says the demands of the ideal self can never be fully satisfied. You can never completely live up to it. Because having that ideal there is part of what gives your mind this structure. He says we are most completely aware of this split when we feel shit. What we think of as a self is fundamentally an ethical subject. A self is constituted in relation to its good. A self, our self, is organized around certain core values and feelings. The subject shapes itself in relation to a demand it can never meet. Hillel Schwartz, the historian who wrote this history of American dieting, says that between 1930 and 1980, the market for products related to losing fat, with diet pills and exercise machines, exploded. And sellers began to target new markets like women and old people and children and even babies and even thin people who were quote, in danger of being fat. And as a business strategy, that's genius. Because most people who lose weight end up doing it back on. So that means they get caught in these cycles of shame and failure and we become lifelong customers. Economics 101 is finally being a command, somebody will surely survive. During the reality, you can feel it. I've been reading a lot of articles about people selling laxative tea in TikTok and tea, or people selling dangerous dietary supplements that are meant to be really slim, or people marketing surgical procedures to give you a bigger diet. And Christian's model of the split self can actually help us understand what's going on. Adverts give you an idea. They infiltrate the ideal self and encourage you to develop a particular subjective, a particular relationship with yourself to get you to find right. Now that our dry ingredients are mixed, I'm going to take the butter, the sugar, and the lemon zest and cream them together. Now, because of all the butter and the sugar that I'm adding, the cake is going to end up quite high in calories. And the funny thing about calories is, if you were to ask an ancient Roman how many calories were in the bull's testicle they were consuming, they would have said, quid vitrix, which is Latin for, what the fuck are you talking about? Calories are an excellent example of what French philosopher Michel Foucault called a technology of subjection, a tool that encourages the subject to develop a particular relationship with itself. Foucault was particularly interested in how institutions create the subjects that we relate. We get taught how to relate to ourselves, not just by our parents, but also by schools and workplace and media. The individual is not to be considered as a sort of elementary nucleus, a primitive atom, a multiple and inert material on which power comes to pass against which it happens to strike. In fact, it is already one of the prime effects of power that certain bodies, certain gestures, certain discourses, certain desires come to be identified and constituted as individuals. Foucault said that a big part of how subjects are produced in the modern age is with the cunning use of surveillance. He was very inspired by another philosopher, Jeremy Bentham, who designed a hypothetical prison called the Panopticon. The Panopticon is circular, with cells arranged around a central watchtower that can see into the hall. The prisoners never know that they're being watched, but there's always a possibility that they might be. And so they learn to act as if they are always being watched. Instead of planting a guard outside every cell, you put them on their heads, put it into the ideal self. And in this way, we create subjects who are obedient and docile. Foucault wasn't worried about the literal prison, but people have hurt his own being. He was asking us to consider whether other institutions might function in a similar way. There's a tendency, especially in the online web, to read Foucault as saying, ooh, power imposes things on us, scary. People hear the words technology of subjection and they think subjection as in oppression. But in fact, that's not what he's saying. And if we examine his later work, we can grasp his point better. If power were never anything but repressive, if it never did anything but to say no, do you really think one would be brought to obey it? What makes power hold good, what makes it accepted, is simply the fact that it doesn't only weigh on us as a force that says no, but that it traverses and produces things. It induces pleasure, forms knowledge, produces discourse. It needs to be considered as a productive network which runs through the whole social day, much more than as a negative instance whose function is repression. Subjection here just means producing subjects. Foucault's point was that subjects are produced by the society in which they live, for worse and for better. I'm giving Foucault credit for this idea here, even though similar things were said earlier by the children, and we can think about calories as a technology of subjection. Calories are, of course, real in the sense that miles and inches are real. It's a measurement of energy, but the popularization of the measurement and the idea that there is a recommended daily allowance that you are supposed to be eating encourages us to have a very different relationship with food than people of religious practice. When a menu, for instance, has the calories listed, that implies that it is something that everyone else is thinking about. And it works on, despite the fact that the real story of how the body puts in all to operate is a massive bubble and how the woman. You would be surprised how much a little hormone can change your body. So if you can't make your own, store-bought is fine. There. Now that the mixture is in the tin, we're going to bake it in the oven for 25 British minutes on 160 British degrees. Don't forget to wear your oven gloves, or you too might get an unsightly burn on your hand, and the knowledge that everyone can see it and is certain to be giving you truthfulness about it will drive you absolutely mad. When I was going through this trouble with my body, there was an added layer of education at the time, as somebody as a man, and very much in the past. So I was determined to make manhood work by becoming ideally this kind of Chad Prince Charming, not only also illnesses. And this sort of thing happens a lot. So a lot of times they'll join the army or spend a lot of time in the gym and they get really huge as a way of trying to outrun the energy or satisfying the desire to change without changing the one thing that really does need to denial is not just living. And something I noticed when I transitioned is that for a man to sit down and finish a big meal is often portrayed as a victory. It's complicated. For a woman to sit down and eat a big meal is often portrayed as a failure. We've given into temptation, we've been naughty, we have let ourselves go. So there's two different kinds of relation to the self going on. Take a look at this advert in 1910 of Kellogg's vacuum juicer. The skinny lady is saying, "Don't cry because you are crying. Say it to Professor Kellogg, and he will live useful as he is to me." And the big lady is crying because she has a stomach. As a woman, it feels like if I'm fat, then I'm going to be disqualified from having gender. Or rather, if I'm fat, then I'm not generally going to be considered beautiful and sexy, and therefore I'm going to be disqualified from having gender. And I think this might be part of the reason why I, in particular, feel so much pressure to be very, very thin. My womanhood is already seen by many people, including Her Majesty's government, as questionable. And so the temptation is to double down, right, and try to be the perfect woman, even though that is impossible and dangerous to attack. And it's not just transness or fatness that might be potentially disqualifying. I watched this great video around her by a small YouTube called Time Talks, where she says that she feels quite pressured to be kind of them on camera, like the on the herself, because as a darker skinned black woman, her femininity is also seen potentially into question. For the last almost century, feminist philosophers have been quite interested in how women is subject how we are taught to understand the way to ourselves. Many of us say when it comes to food, we are taught to regard ourselves with discipline and civility. By publishing our images of skin women and relaxing lives, we are taught that our bodies are really rich. When I walk on the street or actually go straight to money, I am reminded that my body is just. So I'm ready to judge myself. I mean, look at Nigella. This is a completely unrealistic body standard for women. She's only 5 millimeters thick. Now, I see a lot of people talking about this issue on social media, but they talk about it in terms of toxic. Like, oh, if you're not seeing it, you'll get beat on TikTok. Yeah, and I understand that. I have also been forced to feel comfortable. I signed my name in blood and shot in a fist of in hand of the algorithm. But I want to take it one step further. The American organizing the world so it's more important than just getting the right symptoms and attention. This is about political control. This is about women being encouraged to regard our own subjectivities as lesser, and therefore to be less inclined to organize for women's rights. The more financially independent, in control of events, educated and sexually autonomous women become in the world, the more impoverished, out of control, foolish and sexually insecure we are asked to feel in our bodies. Quietly mad population is attractive. Let's take an example from history. Hillel Schwartz talks about the Reverend Sylvester Graham, or Graham, not a Graham pronounced. He invented what Americans call graham crackers or graham crackers. He was kicking around in the US in the early 19th century, basically doing Jordan Peterson. He used to give public lectures to women about the evils of gluttony. But it wasn't just about that. Graham's idea was that mothers who fed their children too much would produce anxious, unhappy children, and those kids would then discover the evil of masturbation and sex, and they would have a healthy relationship, and they would produce unhealthy things, and so on, and then the nation would decline. So women actually run the home in a particular way. He did preach thinness and carrots and ideals, but it was always about this clear program of social control. That's not to say that there was a deliberate conspiracy about it, just that society produces people who are prone to thinking of themselves and society others in particular. Yes, we live in society, but also society is in the Our mission is to develop new solutions to materials and customers by redefining and streamlining online platforms in customers. So, if you are using online shopping, you will be the subject of this. And on your copy that contains pages and CDs, and you have the opportunity for immediately to donations at this. And you also have the opportunity for installments to your property. And you go out and just watch 6 months ago.
So the customers and spirits they're taking on the let's say about $100 of those from the website that's using spirits. I don't owe you $100 payments to them. What happens when this is in?
Here's office consumers' choices. So we got a lot of consumers and customers who needed an outfit for a special occasion. They wanted to buy a gift for someone, and they didn't have the money right away, so we empowered them to meet their lifestyle goals.
Because of this goals and criticism for the fact that these claims create quite steep rates of interest. And some people have said that they are unlikely that the lyrics and possibilities of events that can be made. What do you say?
We encourage all our customers to be responsible for their shopping. We're very essential in this company, social impact, we are committed to the environment and the workforce. And we have an all-female identified workforce in the office too. That's right. We wanted to call it Amazons, but we're like Amazons.
What advice would you give to young women potentially?
You gotta hustle. You gotta go in. You gotta start that bottom. Just so I have to buy some. She did not need to buy some.
What's your daily routine?
I don't know if and for breakfast, I have the cheese and I like omelet. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, and then I spread That's right. So I started having like people in the office, my sister was in the hospital, and my husband, and we were here. I'm going to I always tell them, so last week, when employee of mine came to me such an opportunity, I what skills can we develop in that time? But that time is not much time. And you're eager. So when I was working, it's 2 weeks notice to learn Spanish and get time to partner. And we have regular check-ins, opportunities in the lead, so you can see where this communication is
No, I'm emotional. What drives you spiritually?
I'm sorry.
Where we can,
I'm very spiritual person. I'm mindful of my experience. I encourage only my peers to practice gratitude. Everything
are you good?
No, I just feel like considers choices in focusing on information.
Are you good?
Absolutely.
You're not good. Are you good?
Jong Rita.
Smells good. While it's in the oven, it's time to mix the drizzle. 100 milliliters of elderflower and the juice of
Kom dan.
No,
Churrasco tudo. Sobre a comida, sobre fat shaming, sobre mudar o corpo, que era o homem no músculo, mudar para a mulher, fazer crash testes, e sobre Foucault e como pancópio de estar sempre refugiado na prisão, se adapta.
Ok.
Aquela prisão ficcional de. Só que agora estava a falar de uma girl boss, estás a ver? Eu acho que era interessante poder discutir tudo.
But he makes the point that the food version of the 1984 is cartelling history. And already realized the cultivation of continuously. My only book, who died secretly, is a survivor of
Não, e o pior, ao fazer com a caneta e com o mesmo régua, depois começa a sujar nos sítios porque a tinta não seca. Portanto, eu tenho que retocar, ou pá, e demoro bem tempo a ser, ou faço mais rápido e depois tenho que dar retoques. Não há hipótese. Estás a ver? Muito chão.
Every coisa dele.
Having developed a new feminine subjectivity myself, I highly recommend.
Tenho sono. Também não quero não pensar nisso.
Não, eu sei que tu também estás.
Quero não pensar nisso. Não dá.
Granulated sugar and coffee. Smells good. While it's in the oven, it's time to mix the drizzle. 100 milliliters of elderflower cordial and the juice of those two lemons. We've been counting ideas, but the subject is confined in relation to itself. And furthermore, that relation is even useful and cultivated not always to our advantage. In the final chapter of this history of dieting, Schwartz made the point that a society which accepted fat and a society questioning capitalism are markets and people's markets. And a society in which more people got better health care and more control over their lives, in which what he describes is, he knows, a utopia. But he makes the point that the food version of the latent total self of the totalitarian system, and will make him realize the cultivation of eating disease. The only wolf who I cited earlier is survivor by creativity. He describes how to be encouraged to develop a subject based around discipline and surveillance in service of managerial things. If you want a vision of the future, Winston, imagine a backroom scale smashing as a human face. Well, do you want big subject is taught, then it might be possible to relearn. Maybe feminist philosophies, but women should simply develop new feminist subjects. I developed new feminist subjects myself, and I highly recommend it. Now you coat or slowly pour it on the grill, sprinkling granulated sugar and coffee. I don't usually end these videos by saying thank you, because part of me feels like this season. But 1 million subscribers is a very special thing. All of us appreciate it. In particular, I'm grateful to people who support me. So this time, you know how deeply I am when I say thank you. Okay. Great. Let's all hold hands and accept one another and be fantastic. I agree. I'm on board. So, one person afraid to is wait. I'm a feminist. I know that you can study I know a lot of the common discourse about capitalism is scientifically wrong. I have read by feminist and activists who have working out that this cycle of determination is shown, and yet I still want to be impossibly good. I still want the unhealthy, unreachable, unreal. And this is the beauty, right? This is what I was afraid to show you, because I know how the internet reacts to people, especially trans women, who grapple with internalized biological values and privilege in real time. But I don't think there's anybody who can pretend that none of us is free of sin. We are all cancelled. I know intellectually that my tears and mistakes are natural and it is roundly and they are harmful to myself and others. And yet, I am still afraid. Now, that's probably a sign that I need to get more therapy. What? And let's not just individualize the quality. Knowing that you're wrong, but believing it anyway. I think part of it is that I can't just opt for consequences. I have to be on the own set. And if I don't fit into my corset or I can't do my job, even though BMI is a notoriously dodgy policy for health, I have found friends that we do not work with. Now, one such people wouldn't be the principle stands have clearly had legal consequences, and they have legal privilege as long as I stay in it. But I don't think the fear of community is just about external connection. It's not about moving depression to the thing, but I do also enjoy it. The world would be better if it did. But it isn't. I've also had a real sense that when you challenge dominant influence, it can be hard to get through it because it feels like a threat to the genuine joy that comes with mastering the skills of exercise or make or voice training or whatever. It's hard to challenge dominant influence precisely because we sink so much effort into pursuing them and that effort is really fun. And there's something else here. I mentioned on the show a few months ago when I don't know. I have tried to develop people in the past and I found that when I started denying myself food on moral grounds, it became quite difficult to stop. I started seeing hunger and mealtime misery in a sign of addiction. Both said that one of the things that trapped my anorexia for so long was that genuine pleasure she got in looking down at other women who were basically to be. There is a dark or addictive pleasure to feeling the passion. So it's not just about being professional from outside the if I'm not internal and helping me taking it into my subjectivity, it would be good to deprive myself of the joy that Christian life is always able to do. It's structured life itself. It's always been helpful. It's always been motivated some polarization on norms and not change. How there might be something other transgressors and then there's a mystery that reveals in subjectivity. And I'm a fan that following the joy has always been very independent of this. There are some people that are very good to change. But I'm happy to say I also love and accept it more now than I did before. And I've got to this place by following the joy. And finally, I was reminded this by my fellow listener. She has a lovely little essay on pleasure and guilt, in which she says, basically, you've got to fight fire with fire. You've got to fight the unhealthy pleasures of self-persecution. But yes, meeting is such a real and mental experience. What does this crazy feeling to want to lose? But I refuse to live in categorically and essentially set myself against the erosion and to turn it into a means of self-persecution.
Glenn referring to top left. Is that a term Glenn using? Yep, the top left. I love Glenn so much, you know. He was such a wild, and it took him so many years to metamorphosize and turn into something new. And I think we all kind of hope he was trying to something more interesting than just a regular, like, Republican, you know? Like a smaller, stupider, gayer Tucker Carlson. Has he ever, come out with, like, any explicitly homophobic, sentiment? Because I know he's been on the trans protest for a while, but has he ever gone out there and said anything homophobic? He's gay. I know he's gay. Guys, I know he's gay. I literally just said it. He's a gayer Tucker Carlson. Why would you? I know that. You think gay people can't be homophobic? Jesus. It's always been sure to stay loyal to the party of the overall, the arguments and rhetoric that tough left uses to many people of possible capitalism, fishing, and from the party will maintain their posture of edginess. Hey, he's referring to me here. No need to refer to something coming here. Nothing, I feel like my interactions with him peaked when I criticized him on Twitter and he responded by posting me a 50-view video of a Nazi pedophile. That to me, the idea that Pulitzer Prize winning Glenn Greenwald, internationally renowned journalist, a figure, I mean, this guy has been like president, this guy is all the work. And he not only does he know me, he hates me enough that his default response to an insult would be to go type in Bosch pedo on YouTube and then find a video from a neo-Nazi and then post that in response. It is truly, truly, truly phenomenal. And I kind of smile a little bit whenever I think about it. BDS is a hell of an illness. Yeah, we got to get there. One day we got to get Trump to shit talk me. Okay, that's the real goal. If we could ever get Trump to shit talk me, that would be like the apex of my career. Actually, the apex of my career would be getting somehow Biden to shit talk me. That I don't know how exactly that would happen, but if that could ever happen, that would be the apex of my career. I have no idea what kind of horrible stunt I would have to pull for that to even be remotely possible, you know, but it's, yeah, that'd be pretty good. That'd be good. So you've probably heard there was a terrorist attack in Florida just a few days ago. The gist of it is that in the ongoing evacuation process that is being facilitated in part by the United States military, the suicide bombing escaped to over dozens and dozens of people, including, I believe, 13 U.S. soldiers, which is terrible. It's the only thing we actually know. Now that is more U.S. combat fatalities in Afghanistan than over the past several years combined. It's obviously a very good deal. Why did what happened? I've said before that ISIS K is a very dominant sub-rank. ISIS is still very dominant. I'm not taking that. I really this I love it.
Before the situation for a chance of print, which is about
ISIS say it's not safe.
the American service actually gave a launch. They're always engaged in a dangerous deceptive mission to save the lives of others. They're far together, they're not going to be on any scene in history. With more than 100,000 American citizens, American Army, activists of all, known as taking safety in Iraq and America.
It is true that while the initial withdrawal was quite a disaster, the again and the lack of security they do seem to be going up in back. Over 100,000 people evacuated after today. It's pretty impressive. So, it's not enough, but there's always going to be a disaster and could have done better. But the effort is being made now.
This is last day out. But part of the way to take over is something that is very important. When you're part of people that are called activists, it's free. That's the good thing. You're alive. I think. Yeah, we have to do it and also have to do it for the unit of the fact. If we follow it, I'm making sure community happens for that. I think that you can go with the year left to 5 years, maybe as an aggressive people do today. You know, there should be some many people in the country.
All right, it's time to review an optics question. So there's no getting around it, folks. As much as the American population was otherwise on board with it, Americans are not happy with how Biden handled the withdrawal. This is the reason why Trump didn't do it and the reason why Obama didn't do it. Because no matter how it happened, it would have been hit pretty bad and it would have been awkward. So this is the reason why tiny baby ball Trump was too scared to do it, didn't want his office fully go down. Chad Biden had people in the square, he was that is unironically the reason why Biden did it. Now, Biden's response to this is very, very important, possibly, because he is now in a position of making America look even more lethal. It's one thing to just leave the country and have necessarily die after it, and then it's another thing to have sort of long, aggressively, sort of protracted draw-out where American soldiers die on the way out, stuff like that. That was really bad. So Biden's response here has to sort of sway the nation of beliefs that America is weak and that he's drops for Obama to have people ready to stare through like people because Obama's a person. Crazy. You know this.
Organizem tipo fixa, quero agarrar os todos. Não,
that he brings into the community. Over the past few weeks, people who have been in the short, in the middle of our training community. This is called luxury environment. People with food and local cooking, baby, and training company change it back and make this thing again. This is why the answer. The thing is that this mission was extraordinary to begin with, and why I've been so determined to limit the duration. The only thing we said this is not a mission, is a very very public. Operating a severe stress attack, and doing that in the work. Because I made constant contact with the military, with women, constant contact. So our commitment to the ground is not today.
Just for a little perspective of when you bring back down the room to right?
They made it clear that we must complete this mission. And that's what I'm really going to do. We will not keep carrying our terror. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation. Also, what it means is that Operation Francis Federation State Assets Mission and Facility. We will respond to close mission at our time, listening to the movement of our children. You know, these census status will not be. We will rescue you. We will get our action out. The mission will on. America will not be intimidated. And I have utmost confidence in our very trust in the community to carry on to save lives of Americans, our partners, our Afghan allies, outlook, and his. It is able to talk about commanders. I asked them what they need. What do they need to get the job done? They told us they're going to trust. And we really get to go. It's okay. But they should take the mental self-necessary to pick up into the group. But we also want to thank Secretary of Defense, the military mission, and all the management here. There's been a complete reunion. Every command on the executive mission, and the best of the team over there. So this service is a little bit of long information from the book right there. And the Lord says, who shall I send? Who shall go for? Here I am, will send me. Here I am, send me. Each one is doing another long person, but here the recognition, sacrifice, and voluntary, and doing there's everything. Not the glory, not the profit, it's the very what we love and do. And asking them to come in there, moving silent. All those uniform, no parents in the last one vision for
Loud breathing, sir. Doesn't?
you know what you want. I think you will say much for me. You'll see this. That's the truth. That's what you really expect. And to do the mission, it will continue. And to do
Okay. Now, what are the problems with that page? Well, the problem is that optical guidance is in an unwinnable position. The reason why is because after a massive terrorist attack that led to the death of over a dozen U.S. servicemen, he needs to appear strong, predictive, powerful, inventive. That's kind of a common way to behave after something. The problem is, we're pulling out of Afghanistan, which means that anything he says has to be tempered by the fact that his original plan to get on out of there is being maintained. So there's kind of like two competing things here. One of them is what we expect to see after a terror attack, and the other one is the ongoing plan to pull out of Afghanistan. Really difficult to manage there. I don't know if there's a way to do this for him. Now, he did say, we shall not forget, expect us to attend armies. And then shortly thereafter, there was terrorist strike, that was conducted very shortly after that attack, which, as far as we can tell, occurred one kill from ISIS-K, organization claims responsibility for terrorism. Now, as far as I know, ISIS K said they were responsible, but they haven't provided any proof. So we don't know necessarily if that's if they were even the ones who did it. But I don't know why else they would take claim to it, and I don't think the Taliban would do that because the Taliban are probably not looking for excuses to keep the United States in school. You know? But it seems unlikely to me that the Taliban would want to provoke the United States into a prolonged occupation when they're this close to controlling the entirety of Afghanistan. So that seems unlikely to me. There are only so many groups that disagree with it. So I'm going to guess ISK. That seems most likely. The drone strike targeted one person. And hey, I'll say this much. Given those preconditions of threat, I really don't give a fuck if we do drone strikes that kill single people with no civilian casualties, and those single people are parts of countries. I don't really care about that. On my descending list of which types of imperialist military engagement I care about, that might be the lowest possible. So, yeah, I do stand. Um, of course, we'll rely on military. There actually have been a few airstrikes conducted by Biden's administration that have been somewhat reasonable. The one, uh, that was in Syria, for example, the one that killed like 17 members of that Iranian-backed militia group, but for the U.S. Contractor, 52 days before, that also didn't have the referral to those casualties. As long as these things are being conducted in retaliation specifically, rather than sort of blanket attacks that kill us as civilians, I think that there's certainly more defensible. Whatever the case may be, I am glad that Biden's retaliation, was a targeted drone strike and not like sending people into the city. You know what I mean? There are certainly worse ways to retaliate. Remember when we retaliated for 9/11? That started a war. That was a very, very bad retaliation. Full bombing. Yeah. But that retaliation system was still okay. It was very performative, this retaliation. There was no actual evidence that the person who was killed, the ISIS-K member, was directly responsible for the suicide bomb in any way. Meaning that Biden's administration may have very well scrambled, said, oh God, we need to find somebody that we can kill. We need to kill somebody right now. And they just chose like an easy and obvious way. Which again, they're going to do that. If they're members of ISIS, then they're better than any other group. There is no group of people on Earth, or maybe very few groups of people on Earth on ISIS here with such a group. That's about as a good as it's going to do. So we had a really tough hospital division. Well, actually, basically, just to find lawyers because it's no part of the group. Yeah, I am. I also would have been okay with fighting the Nazis. Yeah, I also would have been. I'm also okay with fighting the Confederates. They're not just random people. They're part of the militia. That's personally engaged. Yeah. Anyway. Um, um, it wouldn't surprise me if Biden starts to draw some more friendship that highly anticipated film starts. As long as they stay highly targeted stuff to that ISIS members, that is into future occupation, don't come into bombing, don't come into anything that's I think it's about as well as we can't do that. And I do mean that by the way. Just in terms of like the game of politics, it will not have to do anything valuable. It just makes immeasurable conflict. It really nothing like single individuals. Hopefully this isn't enough. It's really bad. All of it is just so bad. Now, before the suicide bomb too, the State Department actually did warn of future right now, or any place you can do that. There's only so much you can do that. There are big stereotypes of future suicide. So I just pull out basically that deal at the end of the month. It's really good. That's a big day. So people for another suicide rate. Yeah, but they don't want us to stay here. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. I fear that if there's another failure to that, and audio service there's a possibility of hiring to do something drastic to prevent the situation. And I don't think it's going to like it over drastic. But that's also obviously, I hope it's really unfathomably lost to the Afghans and the U.S. service leaders that killed during the Afghan. We talk about the U.S. service leaders as far more Afghans because they were having trust. Grim, very much. And they were denied that and also there's a lot of really there's all the students yeah, it's really, really good. Especially since keep in mind the Taliban person who conquered the world, and a person who must be free, and Trump negotiated with the Taliban. The idea that like, the Taliban secured the evacuation of the yeah, like Trump arrived about it. This program is a super one because like the vast majority of the overwhelming majority of conservatives like registered persons involved using this stuff. The stuff they done is like they would get it's so obvious like two states it is a really rough situation. But I'd like to believe that I'm so fucking ready to believe it's if Trump had actually pulled out about that and Trump decided to do the evacuation for the happened with that, then I'd like to believe I would have been sort of skeptically appreciated that. So I also had some did you see the last question? Five on this yesterday. Yeah. Lastly, not being part of the environmental students and more guys okay, it's maybe a difficult thing, but I do pretty much for it. I do think it's okay for ISIS who are doing ISIS. Well, ISIS. They do this. They do this. I am that. And ISIS is the same for the reason I'm getting to it. I don't think they were responsible perhaps for this other things for other people. There was stuff. I think the power is really funny about only in the place that in your eyes is the part of the way you I don't necessarily know if there's anything of the old days. Outbound. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Look at this. Look at this romance right here. The funny thing is in a way, if you like squint a little bit so your eyes blur and you're not looking close to your facial hair, don't they look exactly the same? Like, don't those two look like exactly the same in a way? They both look like conservative, stuffy, not happy to be there dudes. Not at all. I mean, listen here, okay? Stuffy, conservative, they're not happy to be there. They both look kind of indignant. They both look a little bit of they both represent like the far right wing of their respective countries. They're both sort of there with a kind of half necessary. So yeah, like those five. Like yeah, those five. I don't need appearance. That's why I said look past the clothes and appearance. Yeah, I don't need their appearance. I mean, yeah, those five. I'm getting a similar vibe. I think. Yeah, same person, different spot. Sure. They're dating. Sure. Have you seen so much? Have you seen how they married? Yeah, well, I haven't seen it, but it makes sense, right? There's really not that much ideological difference between how that works. Well, ISIS is real. There are ISIS. They're just, really bad. Ross, you think the actually original thing was in all right. I actually don't have a problem conceptually with American participation in the war on terror. The problem is that the war on terror is a literally war. It's fucking stupid because the war on terror shouldn't be literally invading countries. But fuck, the war on terror is us working with countries in that region using our superior technology and military tech to take out like highly volatile targets and operators of terror. Okay? Now, America feels a ton of really close on itself, not somebody in the middle of our general line. When it comes to like fucking Al Qaeda, like, yeah, okay, yeah, alright, yeah, I don't really, yeah, okay. Yeah, Operation Inherent Resolve was good, yeah, 100%, yeah. The thing is, global terrorism is a real problem. The problem we often contribute to. I'm not saying we will. I'm saying that in the times where possible disruption really is our problem, I'm not sure that we're able to push countries in that area to further promote the objective to be the U.S. assassinated in after the trial. Oh, yeah, no, that should have happened. I will always prefer, like 100% of the time, I will always prefer, like capturing files over execution. What happened with Bin Laden's execution is really fucking weird, too. Like, that they dumped his body in the ocean. I do think they killed him, but, like, honestly, I have a feeling the reason they did that is because they mutilated his corpse in, like, the heat of the moment. And then we're like, oh shit, this makes us look really well there. That would be my guess. Because, like, Osama bin Laden was, like, the bad guy for years. I mean, he was the closest thing he had to it. So they go in, and something like, it's not just that they look like that. Like, they probably fought with him. You know, that. Because imagine from their perspective, we're supposed to be public and media got hold of it, and they were like dicks thrown in his face with a fucking government or something. And we were like, what happened here? See what you say. You know? I honestly think that's what happened. I don't think it was a conspiracy theory or anything like that. Because this has happened all the time throughout history. When you storm the Capitol, and the monarch, like, palace is reached, and then, like, the monarch isn't just, like, killed, they're, like, fucking mutilated. This has happened many in history. It seems like they might have happened there. That's my guess. But he should have stood quiet. Would have been better. We so rarely get to his trial. Not to mention, by the way, I mean, if nothing else, wouldn't have been a little bit funny just to, like, hear, like, the U.S. translators translate.
Eu tive um acordo português.
Like, did you think that was a little bit funny? Like, you're translating.
Ai, eu morria.
Estou um bocadinho calor, vou ter que olhar aqui.
Pois, também acho que isto vai começar a ficar muito abafado.
Só que para ver bem onde são os colores que temos termos assim.
Sim. Pois, claro, como foi, mas que não. Não, esquece, é que é impossível para mim. Não tenho personalidade para.
Eu desenvolvi. Nós 20 minutinhos fui desenvolvendo um dia antes de fazer isto.
Eu não tenho e não desenvolvi e não vou desenvolver. Eu se olhasse em artes plásticas.
Trabalhavas em digital?
Não.
Z e é tudo rápido?
Não trabalhava em digital, mas não trabalhava num estilo.
Eras tipo o Carlos, tipo cenas possível.
Provavelmente.
Podes ir fazendo e acrescentando e tal.
Muito provavelmente. Que trabalheira de filha da puta. Olha, não te importas que eu apareça à frente da câmera? Só queria tirar aqui uma foto do corno.
Bem pareceu que o som estava diferente.
Olá, meninos.
Okay, doesn't that kind of give you the vibe, though, that they're so desperate to be able to kill them
Oh, meu oscos.
Yeah, I did it, dude. I killed him. I did it, yeah, you know? think that's the degree of negotiation. Yeah.
Isto cansa um bocadinho também porque.
Eu sei que aquilo não foi de propósito que tu vais ter de retocar, mas parece que alguém foi apunhalado no meio da cena. E acho
Ok, já percebi a dizer.
Estás a perceber? Parece que foi atentado ao presidente ou uma cena
É a
assim.
última cena.
Sim, mas aquele gajo a
Sim,
sangrar. estás a
parece
ver?
sangue. Sim,
Yeah.
mas
Eu sei.
era giro. Por acaso agora estás a me dar uma ideia. Eu já não tenho muito tempo para novas ideias.
Foda-se. Não tinha menor.
Eu gosto disto. Oh, imagina, cada unha é uma nota.
Não, mas eu também gosto.
Cada unha é uma nota.
Pois, mas eu
Só
nunca
faz
fui,
sentido
eu nunca
conjunto.
fui bater punhetas com guitarras e de tappings e de não sei o que. Só
Não,
Miguel.
isto é um conceito de guitarra.
Pronto. Não tenho paciência.
Eu fiquei a pensar naquilo que estás a dizer.
Não, está brutal. Assim, adoro, para mim é o teu melhor trabalho dos que eu conheço, porque há muitos que não conheço.
É outra coisa não visto ao vivo, que é muito diferente.
Sim.
Tem 2 metros e meio, 2 metros ao
Óbvio,
vivo.
claro. Sim, mas.
E só tem 1,25 de altura. Eu tenho até uns 2 metros, 2,5. É isto. E é puxar até. Encaixa na cabeça.
Tu tens noção, eu sei que ainda vais contabilizar, mas tens noção mais ou menos de quantas horas
não
até agora não vais?
tenho,
Não, nada.
E isso é falar a parte em que estive a pensar nas coisas.
Sim.
Mas
Não, eu não estou a falar da discussão.
Não, desta é a primeira vez na minha vida que vou contabilizar. É que não te esqueces de antes, eu durante muito tempo.
É a primeira vez que vais contabilizar.
É.
O que é engraçado, porque então como é que tu calculas o valor de um trabalho se tu não sabes o número de horas que tu
tem que ir pouco a complicado para dentro.
Impede-me de te dar mais trabalho ao menos ou mais horas ao menos.
Não. O António Prates passou-se porque havia artistas que ele vendeu a 3 mil, quadros pequenos. Um quadro pequeno, por exemplo, de um artista português, mais ou menos ao e meio, por exemplo, já há uma carreira. Ele viu quadros que vendeu a 3 mil euros, assim iriam levar a 750. E isso vai descer a cotação de todos os trabalhos de artista. Ao descer isto de um quadro novo, dificilmente vai conseguir vender por 3 mil. A nota vai sempre descer para baixo porque o vendedor desceu. Havia um livro que eu vi na FNAC quando estava na faculdade, que foi a cena mais desmoralizante e cínica que eu já vi tipo, na faculdade. Por mais que saibas o quanto isto tem a ver com especulação, com isso e tudo mais, né? O gosto dos ricos, o gosto das instituições, os amigos, os compadrinhos, da graxa. Havia um livro na FNAC que era o preço de artistas portugueses em leilão. Sabes como é que era o preço? Era ao metro quadrado por cada artista. Ao metro quadrado. Desenhos valiam X por metro quadrado e pinturas valiam X por metro quadrado. Não tem a ver com a qualidade de trabalho, tem a ver com a cotação do
trabalho de um artista XPT ou por 5 paus. Isso foi uma coisa pequena.
Sim. Por exemplo, uma coisa gira, havia uma cena que me doria ali no Príncipe Real fazia, eu ainda participei, já não sei uma vida duas, que era a iniciativa X. Tu não sabias que eram os trabalhos. Portanto, toda a gente fazia um desenho do tamanho de um postal. E depois os meus trabalhos estavam ao pé do puto que ainda estava em Belas Artes e estavam ao pé do. Não diria uma palavra, mas. Quem é que. Tentar ver quem é que assim maiorzinho participava naquilo. Havia nomes. Não, nomes que vão ganhar. E eu acho que Deus é duas. Por um lado é, primeiro tu vais ver se gostas do trabalho. Uns vão lá e vão ver se gostam do trabalho, né? E compram, faço e gosto. Outros estão a pensar, eu vou comprar a pechincha uma obra que vale mais que é do gajo. Portanto, mostra quanto o mercado é um fator neste pouco. Este quadro é quadro para 2 milhões. No mínimo. Tem que ver com os outros, tem que ver com o António, mas eu estou disposto a esticar o bolo deste, porque este é mesmo. Este deve valer mais que os outros. E não te esqueças que, por exemplo, acho que aquele que está lá, teve na António Prates, estava tipo 1.750. Na galeria. Comissão. Na galeria. É que isto é, quando tu chegas a certo nível, se tu vendes diretamente e tal, porque, por exemplo, isso é outra. Se tu tiveres alguém a ter contigo na galeria, há comissões. Imaginas que alguém te vá querer comprar o trabalho pessoalmente, ao teu ateliê, tu não podes ser 50%. Senão não ganhas depois mais. Ficas, aquilo sabe-se e a pessoa desvaloriza. Pá, podes fazer tipo 20%, 30%, ou fazeres em 2 vezes, coisas assim, percebes? Não passa pela galeria. Mas desta cotação é lixado. Como os portugueses não têm grande projeção lá fora, se o nosso mercado fica na treta, como ficou, em 2009 e em 2011, e agora, os artistas valorizam. Basicamente, o que me aconteceu a mim é que eu estava a valorizar, eu tentava vender, e no fundo o que me aconteceu a mim foi que estagnei. Estagnei nas ruas. Não desci, na última ainda vendi. Olha, do descontado, vendi 1 ou 2, já não me lembro bem, agora, acho que foi um maior e um pequeno. Mas não pude subir os preços nessa exposição em relação à anterior. Passaram-se uns anos, só que o mercado ainda ficou pior. Eu subi no mercado, só que o mercado chegou. Foi tipo, bom soco.
Isto deixa-me cantar no Ozzy. O Ozzy foi apanhadíssimo.
Sim.
E o cão fez isto. Encostou a boca às costas dele, não mordeu, não fez nada, só fez tipo, apanhei. E o Ozzy teve 3 ataques tipo, e fugiu. A pensar que ia ser comido.
Isso é cuidado.
O cão não faz nada, meu.
Ele sabe.
Ele faz muito pior do que o cão.
Ele sabe.
O cãozinho anda atrás dele e diz: apanhei-te, agora és tu.
Accurate. E não sabes uma coisa. Adiciones. Todas estas linhas cotadas contra você para definir os bonecos, para pintar-os por dentro e tudo mais. Tem que colocar cá, depois de pintar, para retocar as linhas internas e para engrossar as linhas externas. As linhas externas de cada um. Se eu com 20 anos, se alguém me dissesse que eu aos 40 estava a fazer este tipo de trabalhos com este tipo, eu disse que ia dizer que era um beijo. Mas eu estou a aldrabar muito. Aí malta com uma paixão de santo. Eu só o facto de usar marcadores, só o facto de fazer isto com marcadores de régua, em vez de estar aqui com um pincelzinho a fazer linhas. Não estou a dizer linhas retas. Isso já é preciso ser neurótico a nível serial killer. Mas.
Sei que.
Eu, por exemplo, em relação a artistas que eu conheço, houve gente que desistiu das artes e tal, mas hoje tinham coisas que eu nunca percebi. Por exemplo, um que começou a fazer uns trabalhos em cimento, porque gostava de cimento e porque o cimento isto e aquilo. Ok, tem uma textura, ele mexia no cimento, o desenho dele não era muito bom, portanto o desenho dele não é muito bom, o desenho de cimento até ficava com alguma piada, estás a ver? Tipo, o material permitia um desenho menos cuidado e tal. Só que, e outro que pintava em esmalte. E os dois acacharam-se das questões práticas. E eu perguntar com eles, ele mostra isto para fazer, ou eu tenho que isto, ou não sei. Eu, porque é que em vez de tinta não se gira, porque é que tem em vez de tinta esmalte, para depois da tinta e dar as 2 camadas de verniz, isto e aquilo. Não, assim, tem que ser assim. Mas deixam de trabalhar, porquê? Eu arranjei sempre uma forma, por exemplo, isto de pôr o marcador. Para além de levar algum tempo a dizer que copiar bons marcadores e ter que ter marcadores bons, há aqui uma coisa que é a serigrafia faz isso. A serigrafia dás as cores mais claras, porque as cores mais escuras mais facilmente tapam. E o preto no fim. E eu pinto assim, eu pinto as cores mais claras, tento desenhar, tento pintar as mais claras e tapar com as mais escuras. Sei que estas tintas não tapam a primeira, portanto usei uma tinta pior para fazer aqueles bolsões, para pintar tudo com rosa, que era quase rosa. para depois dar estas uma de mão, bem dada, e agora dar os retoques.
Não, já.
Viste o erro, eu conheço essa cara de narrativa.
Não fiz.
Isto. E depois é assim de estar a ver, ok, isto é o braço daquele, passa por cima daquele ou passa por baixo do outro. Também já está definido, agora estou a ver.
No, I can't watch it. It's gonna be copyright. It's gonna be copyright. These on class food. No way I'm going up against the second bar.
Por exemplo, street art é mais difícil ter medidas de controle. É a malta que tem esquemas boas, os testes, a malta que tem mais controle da linha. Eu desvio um bocado com street art porque há muito mais possibilidades de se fazer aquilo. Também precisa muito mais rápido. Fala nisso, a malta lá de Moura nunca mais me disse nada daquele projeto. Pode não ter ido para a frente. Que era nas escolas de educação, lá da associação de...
Eu acho que tu até já tinhas descartado um bocado essa hipótese, para nunca mais terem.
Precisamente, e agora, como eu bem disse, estava a falar de street art, bem das coisas que eu adiei. Por exemplo, aí, tenho um cartão para pôr os números, não foi, na exposição. Eu acho pensar das formas de... É poupar tempo. Não é só poupar tempo, é a coisa ficar mais bem feita à primeira e permitir-te pensar em outras coisas. Por exemplo, imagina, se eu montar as salas todas em uma hora, estou mais disponível para pensar, olha, se quer fazer uma iluminação diferente, se quer comprar qualquer coisa nos chineses e pôr ali ou colar um material qualquer. Sim. Por exemplo, eu tenho esses materiais. Então, eu já pensei, e tenho um espelho que comprei para a janela de casa. Eu já pensei, se quero levar algum material desses, por exemplo, como é que eu tenho aquelas janelas para aquele espaço dos sofás. Colar com coisa naquelas janelas que obriga as pessoas a fazer, imagina, se fizer uma moldura negativa na janela, as pessoas para verem não podem estar de frente, tem que se mexer. Pode ter piada.
Não, e pode ter piada porque também tem um bocado a ver com o conceito de janela.
Precisamente. Olha, é isso.
Ou tem a ver com o filme.
Fazer só
Fazer janela.
fazer janela. E em vez de ser
E
com
depois têm de
isto,
espreitar.
com fita cola
Qualquer
dessas,
coisa têm
com
de
fita cola dessas.
espreitar.
Fazer uma janela, tipo assim, as cenas das luzes. Olha, fixe.
Olha, para dizer aí o amor depois.
Isso. É muito chuvinho. É muito bonzinho.
Olha, eu lembro o Leonel Moura, se eu adicionar piercing as cenas criativas, ele não é doido, não é negacionista.
Não, não.
Não.
Então não temos dor de doenda e máscara
Sim.
e limpezas. Não, nada, não, é fixe.
Só para mim não me enervar.
O Nel é anti-tarados,
Ok.
é um gajo. Tu te enervas com o Nel porque ele é talvez racionalista demais, tipo, ciência, humanismo, razão, isso é emoção, isso é estúpido.
Ok, então aí não chatei.
Certo.
Eu acho que
Não, eu não faço.
Ok. Oh, isso é uma cena, isso é caro.
Era o que estava na sala. Por que deixaste isso na sala? Pede para o dele, pede para o dele. Young! Ai. Ainda bem, não estou com estas vezes.
Se eu estiver a chatear estar aqui,
Gosto muito de estar aqui. É fofinho.
mas não estás contente ao podcast.
Não, o podcast não interessa. Pior dos casos, volta para trás. O podcast é porque, por exemplo, eu tenho muitos amigos que não conseguem trabalhar a vida. se dizem duas palavras, tem que guardar o policial, não conseguem as duas coisas. Estás a ver? Eu, para mim, é o contrário. Concentro-me mais visualmente e mecanicamente se estiver distraído com. Por exemplo, há uma coisa do desenho científico. Que há montes de nota que para poder trabalhar, como aquilo é uma coisa de muito rigor e muito pormenor, há malta que literalmente está tipo com uma bola de stress ou com uma rolha ou uma cortiça na outra mão. Sempre. Que é para manter aquela para a energia, para a atenção e tudo mais, e para a outra mão. A minha atenção não é tanto física, consigo ter o controle móvel e controle e tal. A minha atenção que se acumula é mental. Por isso é que eu gosto de estar a ver qualquer coisa ou a falar. Não estou a falar contigo. Não, e tem piada, porque as únicas vezes que eu vi alguém que a minha vida foi com o meu namoro. Contato foi. Montar a voluntário. Depois ele tive o espaço grande, a minha viu o espaço grande deles. E agora ainda não, mas quando, assim que depois do dia 2, depois da inauguração, vou telefonar ao Manel e vou votar com ele para ele ir à inauguração. Eu acho que ele vai gostar bastante. Porque este trabalho, ele chegou a falar de fazer uma exposição minha contratual na ISPA, mas era com o diretor, que ele tinha muitos contratos e tal, e meteu-se muitas coisas aqui no meio. Portanto, esse projeto fica um bocado em águas de bacalhau, talvez pegue nisso no futuro. Mas acho que ele vai curtir certos desenhos e certas coisas, porque eram um bocado as ideias que a gente tinha falado para as telas. Ok? Porque ele sabe que ele já sabe que são os meus interesses, né? Não há muita gente a fazer coisas politizadas, no fundo. Não há muita gente a falar da poluição e disso na arte contemporânea. Há aquelas coisas para a televisão aparecer, né? Que é tipo, o artista juntou 500 bolhas. Mas a nível de, por exemplo, o Bordal Pinheiro, há muitos mal canalizados plásticos que eu já percebi que odeia, que acho que não é horrível. Eu acho que é bom. Agora, aquilo não está exatamente no nível de arte contemporânea, aquilo está no nível da ilustração. É um gajo que tem uma boa técnica, tem boas imagens, tem umas ideias giras, mas aquilo é uma ilustração. Estás a ver no sentido? Está no nível da ilustração, do cartoon, não tem grande complexidade por trás. Também é popular por isso, né? As coisas mais. Eu tento ter um bocadinho da atração plástica dos trabalhos, mas tento que digam mais, que tenham um pensamento mais complexo por trás e saibam mais a interpretação. Então este dá para tanta coisa.
Sim, está muito bom.
Isto até dá para menos. Tipo, meter um nome aqui na onda. Já trouxe o peixe para aqui. É o volume de qualquer coisa e depois vou fazer pequeno. Tenho que ver, eu não sei se chega por cento também, não é? E tenho que saber hoje, quer dizer, que eu vou algumas coisas. Se bem que eu isto está com som. E eu acho que a pulseira toca mesmo sem som nas 2 semanas.
A minha deixa de tocar outra vez.
Porra, isso é muito estranho. Estamos a chegar às definições disso. Então, tu tens consultas hoje?
Agora,
Ok. E à tarde também?
faço lá para a gente.
Ok. Por exemplo, a mim, intervalar o trabalho deste ano, fixe não está a partir coisas, está a cortar madeira, está a construir coisas, fazer tipo. Contrário do cuidado. No sentido. Não, contrário do delicado.
Esta foi a minha orientadora da tese, mas
Ok. Correu.
correu bem. Fui 19.
Ah, então tese de licenciatura.
Sim.
Ah, mas que estamos a falar de outro mês.
Esta mulher é só. Foi a gaja que me meteu ainda mais neurose, mas que me ajudou a ter as coisas super esquematizadas e a pensar do ponto de vista científico.
Ok.
E era uma amiga dessa do caraças também. Não era só uma gaja rigorosa e era boa pessoa, era amiga, era bué da boa. Estava a ver se encontrava. Gostava de voltar a ver.
Encontrava
Essa
quando
cara
se
não
fala
tem
nas redes
Facebook.
sociais.
Sim.
O LinkedIn?
Sim.
Estava a mandar a mensagem.
Fez mandar um e-mail, que deve ser o mesmo, ela deve estar nisto.
Certo. Então, e dá para ver se tem que fazer, não é? O LinkedIn descobre se não. Tu estás a dizer isso quando o YouTube está a gravar.
Certeza que já várias pessoas disseram isto.
Pronto, é só. Eu acho que ninguém vai ver, porque isto só vai seguir para ele depois. É que eu depois já sou download destes vídeos, né? Depois de ter o catálogo feito. Olha para aquilo. Olha! O que é isto? Coitados dos gatos, eles gostavam muito disto.
Também já vai dar tempo que eles não usam.
Por causa dele. Isto está ali, mano, está ali bem banal. A gente falou de ir lá a esse sítio, esse centro comercial, por causa do teu smartphone. Vamos ver se há alguma coisinha para os gatos e até podíamos pôr uma coisa destas ali fora, quer dizer, depois nunca os buscamos. Depois nunca os conseguimos contar. Young! Young! Não! Espera aí. Que dia é que é dia 22 de setembro?
Dia 22 de setembro?
Sim. Eu tenho consulta.
É quarta-feira.
Tenho consulta.
Eu estou rindo. Boa. E não é,
Ficou marcado ontem.
é engraçado que. Como é que me está a lidar? É que agora tenho de atender sempre, que isto pode ser de médico e de cenas.
Certo.
Ah, sim, sim.
Hey guys, so just check. Look, I've been kind of on the fence about this for a while. That's why I've never spoken on it. But with the amount of people that I know recently that have gotten COVID and like the numbers rising, I think it's important for me to say like I got the vaccine. I think everybody should. I think it's really important like that we all do this as like citizens of America. We have to look out for each other and make sure we control that. So I suggest to all my followers, you guys make set an appointment, get the vaccine first. They psych! Bitch! If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I never had COVID. Can't stick to me with that motherfucking deal.
Opa, ouvi uma partilha do Carlão, porque o Carlão estava bem da gordo e perdeu 7 quilos em menos de um mês.
Ok.
E ele está a ser acompanhado numas clínicas, que é uma na Expo, e que eles estão com uma cena que é tipo 15 euros, vais lá. Aquilo o acompanhamento é 20 minutos por semana.
Sim.
De treino intensivo e eles ensinam-te os exercícios e as cenas e não sei o quê.
Ok, não é uma cena de dieta.
Pá, e ele diz que mudou a alimentação, mas ele não comprou nada, só teve fixação.
Sim, não é rotinas.
Sim, exatamente.
Nutrição e exercício.
De qualquer forma, não custa nada ir lá, não bocado naquela sem compromisso para ver.
Sim, para ver.
O Carlão, de facto, perdeu peso significativo. E nota-se bem aqui, o Carlão estava com uma cara parecendo uma bola. Ele estava mesmo gordo. Por acaso é um bom exemplo, que estava uma bolinha.
Era o vídeo que eu estava a ver sobre as dietas de alimentação. Ela estava a dizer que fez o vídeo todo e a falar de comida, já o osso, com as piadas, com os vossos falar de comida, em relação. E percebeu que todos os vossos que tinha feito no vídeo, estava a fazer um bolo, estava mesmo a fazer um bolo, que era a piada para o contexto, e percebeu que em todos os sketches nunca tinha o bolo, porque não queria aparecer em câmara a comer. Uma coisa gorda, sempre os problemas todos com peso, desde que antes de fazer a transição e tudo, já tive os pesos. Fez uma dieta, perdeu para entrar para a escola de atores, fez uma dieta que estava a dizer que perdeu quilo, foi 16 quilos. Não, 16 quilos não era 16 quilos. Mas eu não sei disse 16, perdeu e estava na mesma. E só melhorou um bocadinho a saúde porque depois conheceu alguém que depois foi no ginásio. Esse gajo é o filho do Tom Hanks.
Este?
É.
Eu não vi este cigarro. Não tem paciências nenhumas com banho.
E anda a espalhar coisas anti-vacinas. É o que dá a nasceres com o que é dor da boca que nos fazer sobre as plantas.
Olá, Tatiana, de que cor vai vestir no casamento? Perguntou o Major.
Para não ir igual. Quando é que vais ter assim? Para pintar a representação. Para lá a minha família toda da tua cor. Sim, não é exatamente os. Este era o casamento é que eu sou escolhido branco. Não vais ver? É o mais escolhido neste caso é o contra os outros. A única coisa que não se pode fazer dos outros é o que mais escolhe este.
For at least 2 weeks, because you might not show symptoms. You've got the most powerful immune system on the planet. Then you might not actually show a lot of those symptoms for a good while, but we'll be spreading it to all things without.
Isto não escolheu os caras.
Sim.
Eu estou a dizer quando ele tiver uns minutinhos que eu gostava de falar com ele para dizer o fone. Fala destas merdas todas de saúde. Porque assim, tipo, eu ontem estava a falar comigo ao Miguel do Canadá, né? Portanto, quando estavas a apreciar o cão, eu estava a dizer, mano, eu nem sequer estou tipo isto. Eu estou só exausta. Sim, não é exausta. Tenho vontade de tirar as férias da vida. Já temos meses.
If you're immunocompromised stable, well, let's come up with a bit of humor here, okay?
everybody okay with humor and energy for a little bit? I need to engage in my inner post-apocalyptic character. Let's go ahead and talk about the reality that COVID might actually mutate our whole way that we are going forward. Let's entertain that hypothetical for just a moment. Would you then say that every single human never go outside and should never ever be able to experience the world around them? Or would you make the inconsequential sacrifice of wearing masks and go outside and go into enclosed areas? Because again, if you're just outside walking around, the mask isn't as necessary. But when you're in an enclosed space and you are constantly being monitored then that is an area that masks is going to be supremely effective compared to outdoors where you're probably safe. So in instances in which you need to wear masks, you have to take person for control, especially if you are the recipient of thousands of dollars, other next. I would assume you do, so you might not have to sit down.
Mas ele disponibilizou-se logo e diz que quando eu acabar a consulta para lhe dizer qual é a minha disponibilidade para falar comigo. Pelo menos é bom sinal em sentir que eu não estou bem e ele disponibiliza-se, não é?
Sim.
Eu não tenho que estar sempre a falar uns com os outros, mas pelo menos se estivermos lá quando os outros precisam, já é sinal de amizade.
Like if you have issues with national security, things that they were. The issue with national security is I'm tired of wearing it with all these good people. That's not a good reason. That is the most childish reason you could pick.
Hoje em dia não ficaste com cold feet.
Não. Aqui.
Acontecido, está feito.
Is it that you are tired of being inconvenienced? You'd rather a large group of families that sacrifice their entire lives of mental well-being because you're tired of being inconvenienced slightly? That is the most privileged fucking.
Que? Tu ficaste?
Não, nunca tive.
Só se quer smash it.
Só como uma malta normalmente fala disso, não é? Mas, quer dizer, eu nunca conheci casal nenhum que tivesse por acaso, nem os meus amigos. Mas como a malta nos filmes está sempre a falar dessas cenas.
Há uma questão que é.
Nunca, nem os meus amigos que casaram nunca ficaram um bocadinho nervosos, no sentido de espero que a festa corra bem ou coisas assim, isso é normal.
Não, conflito é. Eu acho que não quero fazer isto. Isso é o que é o conflito.
Tipo, não tenho a certeza que sei, é mais, não tenho a certeza.
É uma expressão de medo, não é? Tipo, ainda agora estava a usar com um gajo que era o Cold Feet Crowder, que foi um lá. Primeiro, há dois casos em que vejo isso acontecer. Pessoas que não moraram juntos, não convivem juntas e tudo mais, e há aquela cena de como é que vai ser quando mudar a vida.
Não sei se é bem isso.
Fizemos o teste. E a segunda é a malta.
Só pensei em dizer a tua, foi a primeira coisa. Não dá, fala disso.
E a malta que decide casar por impulso. Ou seja, eu gosto de ti, estamos juntos há não sei quantos meses, vamos bem, ou até já temos de mudar juntos, vamos casar. E depois posso pensar, peraí, o que é casar? Espera aí, eu já pensei na vida com a pessoa, espera aí, eu já pensei, por exemplo, nós não somos pessoas que nos chatearmos por causa da questão de quem é que vem ao casamento, quem é que não vem, mudares ou não mudares, o status do casamento. Isso dá discussões e coisas malta a cancelar o casamento. Muitas vezes a pressão de organizar o casamento com malta que não é conflituosa, mandaste que é tipo 60 euros ou 70 euros.
Não é isso.
E mudar os cartões todos.
Até o livro do carro. Isto não mudas nos próximos 3 meses, tens multas do tamanho de Setember.
É ridículo.
É que eu agora, por acaso, ultimamente, até tinha pensado, olha, vou mudar o nome.
Sim.
Porque se fosse o cartão de cidadão e a carta de condução, isto é relativamente tranquilo, agora já não é preciso sempre marcação, vou a uma loja de cidadão, está tudo. Aí, mas começo a fazer as contas, porque eles puseram lá no grupo, quem já o fez, não é?
Sim.
Isto é mesmo para as pessoas não fazerem.
Eu não cheguei a falar contigo por estas palavras todas na conversa, mas eu sempre achei estranho isso de mudar o nome, de passar a ser de uma reunião e de outra, E há aquela coisa toda da anti-casamento ser
Eu
uma
acho
questão
giro,
de.
eu acho giro uma coisa. Porque as nossas duas famílias vão fundir-se. Portanto, eu deixo de ser só a minha, eu deixo um filho.
No fim, não mostraste.
Sim.
Não,
Sim, faz
também é
todo
só do
sentido.
lado de cá. Mas deixa-me só dizer, só para dizer isto, os caminhoneiros tinham muito isso, o lado da propriedade e tal, a mulher
mas eu
passava
vejo isso assim.
estou a dizer que tinha danos. E, por exemplo, até recentemente, a mulher tinha isso, por exemplo, no tempo de Salazar, decidiam com quem é que as professores primárias podiam casar, as mulheres não podiam sair de Portugal sem os seus maridos. Por exemplo, o Sam Cidadinho lembra-se que a mulher, mãe dele, o Sam Cidadinho é um gajo que tem 50 anos agora. É muito rápido. Tem 50 anos. A mãe dele era a Mrs. não sei quantos Sidney. Não tinha nome próprio. Tinha o nome João Sidney. Era a senhora João Alcobia. E não podia ter um cartão de crédito, não podia ter nada.
Sim, mas eu acho que nós podemos ter o melhor dos dois mundos.
Claro que sim. Eu acho que
É
tudo é
agradável.
como independente.
E acho que o teu nome,
E não ficava mal, por acaso.
Não. Agora, estou a pensar, nem é questão do dinheiro, a questão do dinheiro neste momento até confesso que é que me preocupa menos. É a chatice de ter de um período de X tempo a mudar toda a documentação.
É como se mudasses nome por qualquer outro motivo. Não está facilitado por ser casamento, que é estranho, porque é uma norma cultural.
Isto ia ser uma coisa automática, a partir do momento, mesmo que pagasses, a partir do momento em que tu vais a uma
É uma norma
conservatória
cultural,
e
habitual.
há uma alteração, a nível de serviço central, devia ser assim. Devia ser assim.
O simplex não chegou aos casamentos.
Portanto, é 30 euros no cartão do cidadão, mais quase 40 da carta de condução, o livre não sei quanto é que é. É só 100 e tal euros no meu nome. Só naquela.
E como tu dizes, 100 tal euros, mais os chatices.
Sim, mas lá está, o pior é as chatices. Que é teres de tratar disso tudo numa altura de Covid em que não sabes bem como é que os serviços vão funcionar.
Não, mesmo fora de Covid, isso tudo é uma seca. A diferença pré-Covid é que tu ficavas com um papel provisório para tudo. Portanto, não era resultado. Era a grande diferença pré-Covid. Ficavas com o papel provisório, pronto, apresentavas, eu fiz o pedido.
Bem, mas isso também pode acontecer, ou seja, eu posso ir tratar das
coisas. Se der tudo
e se estiver tudo atrasado, eu tenho papéis e guias que me dizem, mas já está tratado, mas não trata, não é?
Sim, nesta altura até a coisa é. Sim, nesta altura.
Ainda estou a pensar nisso, estou a tentar ver como é que as pessoas estão a resolver isto para ser
necessário. Isso quando? No dia 10. Não antes ou depois. Sim.
É quando o casamento é formalizado?
Pois, não é mesmo. Podes criar uma quinta carreira. Já tens música, já tens a psicologia, já tens a mensagem, já tens jornalismo. Podes criar.
Não.
Even the moratoriums were not substantial losing their homes. And especially because, oh wow, you might be able to put a house where you'd be able to do it. Jobs are not fine because there's a lockdown. And then you've got people who are essentially workers who are still working with the lockdown and therefore getting sick and having disease. Those are the ways that the virus is allowed to mutate. Every time the virus spreads, it's having little virus babies. The little virus babies are chances of mutation. While the Delta variant may not be the kicker here, the fact that the Delta variant and certain other things exist are because we are not able to eliminate COVID. COVID is what it is. It's not going to be eliminated just by everybody getting there and being meeting to it. It's still being spread. It can only be eliminated by being starved. We did not do whatever reason, several reasons. Now, we and other countries are not able to adequately starve this virus. So we live in this reality where the virus is not starved. And this reality is what champagne are going to include thousands, there's potentially millions of other people to do the same unholy shit he's doing, which creates a world where there are more virus mutations And then it continues on and on and on. I'm not going to go full dimmer and say that, oh no, the speech seems to be erased. That is it. That's really not natural. Anyway, going that far would be naive. Human race is a very adaptable race. We find thousands of ways to handle all the shit that we are dealing with on a daily, yearly, generational basis. We'll find a way to operate in whatever world of reality COVID puts us in. But it should probably be known that as a populace, we were also responsible for not always stopping COVID and putting us in whatever inconvenient place we find ourselves. You want to be angry that you're having to wear masks all the time? Cool. They are really inconvenient. I can't stand them. I have to actually wear cloth masks that are disposable so that I don't have in my mask because it hurts my allergies and then I'm out for the entire day. If I have an emergency accident in the day, I'm screwed for the whole day. So I get it. I've had to do something that I don't want to do, disposable mask, to adapt to that reality. I'd like to get away from this reality. Right? It's like you don't protect you. It's really, really cool. But with that said, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Also, fun, we'll do a fun experiment. Let's go ahead and guess in the chat and also in the comment section what's the likelihood that this video is going to get struck by YouTube because I'm talking about COVID and they still haven't lifted the strike from the last time. So let's see. Let's see what they do. Let's go ahead and play the game of how dangerous is this matter. With all that said, let me know your thoughts on the comment section below. If you want to like news and take concept and do so. And as always, everyone. For your fan art submissions. With that said, let's go ahead and get into and now racing. Let's go ahead and talk about Ken Ham. There we go. So, from August 11th, I was planning on covering this much closer to the actual date of the tweet, but for those who know what's been going on in the background, between channel striking and medical issues, I have not had those opportunities. So, from Ken Ham, our glorious ARC enthusiast. For an increasing number of speculators, if you disagree with them, what you say is being hate speech. It is a reminder that people are not neutral. As God states, the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit ... bottom text. Okay, so he linked an article here from CTV News. Really, the article before we continue going on with Ken Ham. Consider this your honorary ham and egg news episode. Despite the fact that I actually did do a ham and egg news episode over on College News channel, if you want to go see that, please go check out College News. It was effective again. It was a fun time. From CTV News, you can't pray the gay away. Threats of violence made, protests held over the week. The future in Kelowna. All right, so I'm just going to go and say this right now. Praying the gay away, it's not a matter of opinion thing. That's just a fact. I'm sorry, Ken. If you believe that God created everyone in the world, then you have to also believe that God created people gay. You can't just pray that away. But a new church in D.C. Pentagon has prompted protests and even threats of violence due to its publicly protested beliefs. The criticism and action against Praxis Church, how the fuck are you calling it that? And Columbia has been in response to a statement on the church's website, which proves that believers should support marriage only between men and women. So we believe that divorce, adultery, and homosexuality constitute a violation of God's intention for marriage and sexuality as laid out in the Holy Bible. We do not condone same-sex marriage or homosexual lifestyle. Additionally, the church claims anyone who doesn't identify as gender due to people who resist. They've been influenced by the sin of the world. So all people who are trans have been influenced by the sin of the world. So they hate all LGBT people, lesbian, gay, trans. They hate. That's what it is. I'm sorry. They hate your sin, but they love you as a sinner. Which I'm just going to go ahead and say what that really means to me. They hate your sin, but they love you enough to hope that you can get into their doors and drop money on their donation. That's what it means. That's what it really means. I understand that it might not mean that to most people, but to me, that's what I think. Thank you very much, Elliot's name for you. I agree.
Good.
So, we basically know why. I will say this, threats of violence, I don't know what particular threats of violence have been issued. If they're saying that there's an arson on the church or whatnot, I don't know. I don't condone violence. Especially in situations like this where you can have 1,000 actors, but at the same time, I don't know what particular ways of violence. So I can't really do it for you. What I can say though is we have context for what is going on here. So we can go back to our lovely Kevin Eggenberg and Janet. So we read this week for an increasing number of sections which we disagree with them, what we say is the hate speech. So let's go ahead and talk about what hate speech is. Now, granted, in the United States, hate speech is protected speech. So when I'm saying something is hate speech, I'm not immediately saying nobody should be allowed to say it. No, what I'm saying is it takes a particular category. So things that are specifically against minority groups, arguing that something is, let's say we're talking about Jewish, right? Hate speech would be saying that Jewish people control the world and should be right. That is saying that LGBT people should not be allowed to marry. And that's you're discriminating against a minority group. To me, that fits. And then, of course, calls for violence. I would also uniquely in the United States, calls for violence are actually a thing that we do have issues. Apparently, things that incite violence and then calls for violence are different categories. Things that incite violence, in some cases, we will still have a protected. I'm very good handle on staff terrorism, fairness. But the two things men can do. For the mind is set in the flesh is possible to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. That's in Romans 8:7. And there's certainly increasing antagonism from such people against the Christian worldview based on God's word. These anti-God people don't want Christians to have freedom for their beliefs based on the Bible. Okay, now let's go ahead and just highlight this section. An increasing antagonism from people against the Christian worldview. Right. So, if your Christian worldview is that there is a super powerful being that's in sacred wisdom, creating a laser fire to torture people forever for the crime of not thinking he's a good person for creating a mega fucking fire, then yeah, of course there's going to be an increasing antagonism out there. Usually, though, mere belief in that deity is not enough to create that antagonism. I'm sure there are several atheists in the world who have such antagonism. I used to be that kind of atheist. I used to have antagonism. Mere belief in God was necessarily an affront to me as a person. But now that I've had the time to calm down, my issue is the things that stem from that belief. So, you believe in a God. Cool. You believe in a God that was crucified forever. Not cool. You believe in a God. Cool. You believe in a God that says says that minority groups should be stoned to death for loving each other. Not cool. Before we begin the video, I want to go ahead and throw out that fun reminder that we are on YouTube, so if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It would be an immense help for the channel, and those numbers really do mean a lot. And if you want to catch any of what goes on this channel live, and the next thing you can do is next, I'll hit that follow button over there so you can know when to go live there. Alright, I'll stop taking up the time here. Back to the video. That increased antagonism because of beliefs that stem from a particular flavor of God. One that is exemplified in the first one. So, the God that forces you to be homophobic, not good. The God that forces you to be transphobic, not good. These are things that I consider to be dumpster fire for the Then he goes on to say, these anti-God people. Now, this is different, because the first part was against the Christian worldview. I could be against a particular variant, or many particular variants, of a Christian worldview without being against your God. Like, let's say that your God doesn't actually want you to hate gay people, but your worldview is that he does think that, then I'm anti your worldview, but your God? Probably not. I genuinely don't care about it. I know, again, this is back to the atheist thing. There's a Richard Dawkins quote that I do earlier in my channel, where it's your God is the most malicious, capricious, evil, xenophobic, genocidal, infanticidal, maniac, blah, 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 going down the line. It's a quote from the God Movie, which is literally like a quote from the atheist. In the world where your God legitimately holds those beliefs, but the argument that he necessarily holds them, I don't think holds water. I've met people who are Christian who do not believe in this genocidal, homophobic, transphobic God, and yet they are Christian. So I can not hate that God, but still hate very many variants of his worldview that calls you to calls you. But when you say you can't go through the only Christians to have freedom for their beliefs, I want you to have freedom for your belief. If you want to believe that gay people are the worst thing in the entire world, I implore you, keep having that belief. Now, I would prefer it if you didn't. I would prefer it if I changed my mind on that. I would prefer it if you wouldn't do anything with that belief. But I want you to believe what you thought it was. Just like how I would like somebody to believe that Article 6 is actually not the worst thing in the entire world. But I cannot stop the entire Sonic family from hating Article 6 and everything that stands for. Despite the fact that that is the case, I can still want the world in which they are free to have that. I want a world where you're free to have Christian worldview. I want a world where you're free to have a variety of Christian worldview. But I can also have a preference on what worldview that is. I can want you to be free from having those beliefs, while also in a world where you are not a homosexual, where you're not a trans, where you don't want to kill people based on the color of their skin, where you don't think that flooding the entire world was a good thing, actually. I can want those things while also wanting you to have freedom in your belief. Much like Christians who believe that they want everybody to have freedom in their beliefs, but would prefer that other people be Christians as well. I can hopefully understand where I'm coming from here. Article 6 is homophobic. Yes, Article 6 is homophobic. Christian can't have speech. He won't. Indeed, all who desire to adopt the life of Christ Jesus will be persecuted. How long before these people follow the banning of the Bible? That's already so in some countries, and has happened many times in history. Secularism tolerance is increasing. So let's go get my bit. All who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. This is what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everybody who goes through life deals with some form of persecution. Every human, even the most privileged human being on earth, has dealt with some kind of friction in their life, of some variety. So you will have a persecuted life who will be persecuted. This is self-fulfilling prophecy. This is like having a prophecy and saying that the sun is going to rise on some day eventually. No fucking shit, Sherlock. What this does, though, is give this a lightning bolt. It can attribute any pushback to them as being prophesied by the Bible and proving that they're in God's word. Stephen Anderson likes to hide behind this a lot with this fucking hateful rhetoric, where he'll say that if people are fighting against red walkers, it's a lot to that. Where he'll say things like this: if people are arguing against you, people are yelling at you, and you're on fire for Christ, and you're doing God's good work. That's what this is. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's also, unfortunately, it's also a tool to allow you to become more extreme. You see, the more extreme your position, the more extreme your views, the higher the likelihood that people will make the things you say, that people will do as much as possible, that people will just in general engage in friction with you, not in the fun, sexy way. There's my plug, keep on filming. There he is, build up. All 9 as the lowest energy plug I've ever done. People will have friction with you, people will be antagonistic with you, the more extreme your views. This is something that I've encountered because my views economically are worthless. I think that workers owning the means of production is better than having them being owned privately or even centrally. I don't want to owning the means of production, and I don't want private business owners. I don't want a bunch of fucking Jeff Bezos out there owning the means of production. I want the workers who work at those plants, in those factories, at those jobs, in those offices. I want them to not own that shit. Because I think that it helps facilitate more egalitarianism, blah, 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 blah. I have a whole school about another. But that is considered an extremist view of the United States. So I get a lot of flack for it anytime I feel up who live for it. I expect that because this is your view. And yes, there will be, you're right. It's 100 people have told me I'm wrong, therefore I must be right. This is literally just ends up being an argument I'm talking about between the other sets. Instead of more people agree with this one, right? More people disagree with it. I'm not going to about it. Continuing on, how long before these people are banning the Bible? Right here, we have the slippery slope fallacy. The Bible has not been banned in the United States. Calls the Bible be banned in the United States. In most secular nations, there are not calls for the Bible to be banned. Nations where the Bible is banned are usually other religiously extremist nations. Usually. I'm sure somebody's going to point out the one exception in the comment section below. Go right ahead, feel free to arcade Soviet, whoever. Point is, generally speaking, it is not secularism that leads to the Bible being banned. It is a competing religion that does that. Now, I understand that in Ham's viewpoint, from his perspective, secularism is akin to a competing religion. God, so, thank you very much for being your voice for it. You're fucking degenerate. Point is, secularism is not your enemy. Most secularists are actually going to try to fight for your right to believe what you want to believe. They're also going to fight for people who want to persecute that. As inconvenient as that might be to you. Finally, that's already so in some countries, and that's happened many times in history. Again, the times of this happening is already going. And then the last point, secularism and tolerance to increase. Ken, are you aware of the tolerance paradox? If I have a minority, person A is minority. Person B says, I wish that people would kill people like person A. We call person B Stephen Anderson. He has said that. But person B wants persecution of person A. And then when person C says, well, I don't agree with you, but I'll fight for your right, say. And that's it. They stay there. That's tolerance and intolerance. If the world exists exclusively of person B's and person B's and person C's, and there's a few person A's there, person A's, two things happen. In scenario A, person A never gets to have a conversation with A over again, because the conversation with A will naturally cross away, because person B's sit is being tolerant. Scenario B, person A is back, and there are no other person. None of these are good. If you are openly tolerating intolerance, then it's just intolerance. The amount of intolerance in the world doesn't change. You tolerating the intolerance, you not fighting against it, doesn't fucking change. Again, you can be perfectly okay in the world that they are free to believe the intolerant in each other. Once they start doing things better, once they start vocalizing it, once they start trying to rally people towards themselves, you tolerate that. That is just intolerance again. Intolerance of tolerance. Intolerance of intolerance is tolerance. The secularists intolerance thing. Literally, in 9 out of 10 cases, you're going to find a tolerance paradox. Again, the one that I'm not accounting for is probably the atheist who just wants all religions to learn because they think of things in terms of black and white. All religions must be bad, and all people are good. If you think that, I would like to introduce you to atheism unstoppable as far as like a scumbag who exists who also is an atheist. Not all atheists are good. Not all religious people are bad. It is a childish worldview to believe otherwise. Also, thank you for coming back and subscribing with your Prime subscription. So, that's all where Ken Hand is concerned. I could go further down the tweet thread. That's all he said. I could go down like everybody else is performing. I think you're just I don't talk up to him all that much, and something about Twitter forces you to condense a lot of bullshit into a small space of text. So I wanted an opportunity to talk about all of that bullshit that there is. So here we are. With all that said, as always, everyone, thank you very much for being so and what I do. Best ways to do so are always in the description below and the conflict or on YouTube. You have to follow it over on Twitch. You have to subscribe over on YouTube. Do that. If you have spare money, I'll also get subscriptions over on Twitch. But that's a different one entirely. With all that said, as always, everyone, keep having a good time.
And I did again, sort of such jokes. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Bo. Thanks for having me. I hate to start on the technical question, but I'm going to. I could see you a minute ago, and now I can't. Is that what's supposed to happen? I should be able to. Yeah, I can't. I did. As soon as you started recording, your picture went away, and now it's just a little icon that has your initials on it. But yeah, I don't see your picture at all. I mean, I can handle that, but I didn't know if it didn't have anything like me, but yeah, I can't see it. All right. Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, so how did this start? Did you decide and ask us
Well, I'm actually like I was a comedian before. I was a stand-up comedian. I'm primarily if you ask me, if I'm filling out a form, ask for what your occupation is, I write down writer, comedian, and I always wanted, pretty much always, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a comedian. And as soon as I got old enough to even start thinking about what types of comedy I would probably do, all of my favorite comedians when I was growing up were people that were like social commentators, people that talked about things that were happening in society, like actual issues and stuff. My number one favorite guy was the biggest influence in comedy was Chris Rock. But Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Carly, Richard Pryor, all of those types of comics were always my favorites. So when I first started doing stand-up in 2010, I immediately I would talk about what I considered like, real things. Like I would talk about racism or homophobia, or I'd talk about the Bible or whatever on stage from the very beginning. And then as far as the videos go, I had this stand-up bit that I did on stage that was basically what the videos ended up being. It was all about. The premise of it was, I hate how every time you ever see somebody that looks and sounds like me on TV, it's always the same shit. It's the same Bible thumping troglodyte, with a misspelled sign about how Jesus hates big government or whatever. It's always the same thing. So I was like, I'm going to start fighting fire with fire. I'm going to start filling other comedians just as loud and crazy and redneck as they are, but I'm going to say a bunch of my, liberal things just to balance the scales. And then I would just say a bunch of liberal shit in a really redneck fashion. And I was doing that on stage. And I talked to people, other comedians during the second time, and bounced the idea around like making videos based around that bit or that character. And everybody I ever talked to was always like, yeah, that's a good idea. You should definitely do that. But I still just kept not doing it because I thought, I need to save up money to buy a fancy camera. I need to learn how to edit and all this stuff. It seemed like a barrier to entry for whatever reason. And then one day in April 2016, in North Carolina passed the HB2 law. I saw a video that was going viral on Facebook on the far right. It was like people in the hospital were sharing it. That's how I saw it. And it was this preacher in North Carolina who was just standing in the woods for some reason, standing beside his big rock ram, just holding his phone and just hollering at it, preaching fire and brimstone about the evils of, perverts in the bathrooms with all little girls and all this stuff. And not a bit joke inside. It wasn't funny at all. Like, wasn't even trying to be funny. Wasn't even trying to be funny, just straight up fire and brimstone. And it had 15 million views. And I saw that and I was like, it's like a light bulb went on. I realized, like, oh man, if this type of thing is what I'm trying to make fun of or satirize, and it is, then I don't need any fancy equipment. I don't need it to look fancy. As a matter of fact, that would be a mistake. Like, what I need to do is do it exactly the way this guy does it. just go out back and holler at my phone, and that's the stop. You know, and as soon as I had that realization, I made the first little redneck video like 2 or 3 days after that, and the first one dropped like 70,000 views or something, and I was over the moon about it. I was like, okay, I guess I'm on to something, I'll keep doing it. And the second one that I made was about the HB2 law, and it went like crazy viral. It ended up getting like around 30 million views on Facebook or something like that, and just like took off insanely. And my like life and my comedy career and all that stuff literally changed overnight as a result of that. I still had a day job at the time. All that allowed me to quit my day job and do comedy full time and go on tour. And that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years. So that's kind of how it got started. And I'd like to think that North Carolina preacher someday, somehow, one way or another, if he knows about me at all or has seen any of my stuff, I hope he knows that like this is all his fault. Or I guess it's God's fault. I don't know. You know, I don't know how he looks at it, but you know, mysterious ways, right? But yeah, it was the direct influence on it. But as far as the content of it, it's just, I mean, that it all comes from a very authentic place. Like I grew up, as long as I've ever had any political opinions at all, they've always been progressive. And I grew up poor in a rural, poverty-stricken part of Tennessee, a very stereotypically redneck area. So like, I've just always kind of been that guy. So like, really, I'm just writing. They say write what you know, and I mean that's pretty much all I've done. Like it comes to me, I come by it all very honest for sure. Like I didn't really have to sit and plan or contrive any of that. It just, it you know, it comes from a very genuine place for me.
Yeah, it comes. I can see that. Yeah, it's funny. It's one of the things to watch. But you're just talking about podcasts. And that's something I did for a long time. And this channel actually did some success. I feel like I actually might say that started making a lot of myself. That I think just and then it kind of blew up. But we also bring up the percentages. It is that anybody that has a beard, very small, yeah, it sounds totally like you are hard right, like ultra conservative things, blah blah blah. Right. The percentage of votes doesn't really show you. And brought that up as something that I think is not going to find their actual viewers. I think it's something that we aware of is that didn't impact, like not at all. Right. I mean, this liberal Southerners tend to be more quiet about their beliefs.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, when all that first happened, I got so many messages. I met so many people in person who said verbally to me some version of like, "Oh, you're like seeing a unicorn, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that people like you existed." Not this is all coming from people like outside the South, but like no exaggeration, people that literally believe that every single white Southerner, you know, at least the Southern enough that had the accent that you could tell it from the South, but every single one of them was like, you know, a Christian conservative or whatever. And like, to me, that's so absurd that anyone could actually think that. But like, people really did and still do really think that. Not everybody. I live in California now. Plenty of people do not look at it that way, or plenty of people just don't give a shit one way or another. But it's very much a real thing. And I was aware of that for a long time before I even started comedy. I knew that was a thing that always annoyed me because again, I've never fit that stereotype in that way ever. But I've always sounded and everything like I would. So it's something that I've always been like sensitive to and annoyed by. So, you know, I try to set people straight.
And actually, it's a service. And again, I was saying, oh my God.
Right.
But
You had to, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
like, cause here's the thing, I never did hide with my accent, but I don't at all like blame people who do or hold it against them because I understand the reasons why you would, and I know that like in a lot of careers or industries or whatever, and I'm assuming journalism is probably one of them. Like, you know, you almost have to, you know, and but I always had such a chip on my shoulder about it ever since I was a kid because we had a lake in my hometown and people from the north had boats on that lake and they come down there in the summer. So it was like a small little tourist town and all the tourists would come up north and like everybody in my town knew like the dynamic was, you know, we would all be dumbass backwards local yokels to them, you know, they all look down their noses at us and stuff like that. And so like I've never not been aware of that perception, but instead of like trying to change it, it made me, you know, like the red ass and the, you know, like it's like fuck me, they don't know me, you know, like just because I'm talking to them, do shit, like it's my ass, like that was my attitude. I always like I'm gonna change my attitude this week, motherfuckers, like that, and that was always my sort of stance, as it were, and you know, I'm very glad that I didn't because I would be remiss, it'd be disingenuous to me not to acknowledge that my accent has been a huge part of all this for me and my whole thing, like without a doubt. So, you know, ended up working out, but I don't blame anybody that goes the other way.
Oh, yeah. That's, it started as a joke, and now I basically
Yeah.
It's
Right. Right.
So outside of the
Yeah. So two of my best friends that I knew from doing stand-up already before all this, Corey Forster and Drew Morgan. Whenever we all had the same manager before the videos went viral. We'd all been doing stuff together, been good friends for a long time before the videos went viral. So after they did, immediately we were like, hey, let's go on tour. We always want to go on tour, and it seemed like an opportunity to. So that started pretty quickly. And around the same time, very, very early on, like, we got contacted by a literary agent, and like, I think we would sell a book, and then we did, and it all happened very quickly. This is 2016, and they wanted, the agent and the publisher and everybody very much wanted this book to be out before the election, just because it was like going to have political themes to it. And so what that meant was we had an insane timeline, unlike it's very unusual for a book to have. It was like 6 to 8 weeks or something for the bulk of the draft of it, which necessitated the three of us sort of co-writing it together in order to make that. So the three of us wrote this book. It's the Liberal Redneck Manifesto, trying to get you out of the dark. And to be honest with you, we did not come up with that title, but I've always had mixed feelings at best about that title. It was publisher's call, but it is what it is. But either way, what the book basically is it's just an analysis and a topic by topic breakdown of like the stereotypes and perceptions, and then on the other hand, the actual realities of what people think about the South and what the South is. So in each chapter, it's broken down by chapter, and each chapter is different topics. So there's like a chapter on guns, on gun culture in the South. There's a chapter on race and race relations in the South. And then there's more lighthearted Southern subjects too. Like there's one on food, and there's one on music. Then you got, there's one on religion. There's one on Southern women, like the whole Southern Belle, where you look at that. There's one on opioids. So it really like runs the gamut, but it's all the things that we thought were like the sort of cultural touchstones, or however you want to put it, of the South. And it was, on one hand, what do people think that it's like and that we are like, where this is concerned, versus what is it really like, and also, what could we do better, what needs to change, that kind of But we all three of us are very happy, it's 2016, so it's been, 4 years ago, we wrote that book, and it feels like a lifetime ago. It seems like another person did it almost. But having said that, we've always been proud of how it turned out and feel good about it. And it was very well received, people seem to like it. It got reviews and all that type of thing. So, I mean, I feel good about the book. But, yeah, it also feels like something from a past life almost. I mean, seriously, because it was like, that's the most insane period of my life, far none today. And I can't imagine that it will ever be topped. I can't imagine there will ever be a more insane brief window of my life, because like the tour, the book, everything, quitting my day job, like it was, and it's all a blur looking back on my point, and part of that blur includes writing the book. But yeah, we're proud of it. We're good about it.
So, you're into
Yeah.
Like Charlotte.
Yeah.
It actually gets you pretty tough.
Right.
It does have to look around and actually accept as a true challenge.
It's weird, honestly. I go back and forth on it. I'm kind of two-minded, and I always want to do commitment. I never wanted to be any kind of activist or putting stuff like a tour or any kind of shit like that. Like, I just wanted to be a comedian. Having said that, I mean, I think it's cool. Anytime you can actually like reach somebody and start a conversation, whatever it is great. I'm glad I have the ability to do that, because, like, again, it goes both ways. So on one hand, a lot of comics get frustrated because they feel like they can't ever be serious about it, like if you're a professional comedian. And that's never been a problem for me. It's totally okay for me to be serious. People aren't put off by that. It doesn't, like, I can get away with being serious in a way that a lot of comedians can't because of my whole thing. And that's an asset, and that's great. But the flip side of that is, I'm comic at heart and everything, like, man, sometimes I just want to, just make some big jokes and talk about, my wife, or just talk about silly shit, talk about my sons, I have 2 young sons, talk about them and all the fart jokes they make or whatever. Like, just, silly, observational, daily life type stuff that doesn't have any weight to it and isn't supposed to. I definitely feel sometimes like, not that I can't do that, but that's not what anybody wants or expects out of me. Like, I definitely feel I feel like a weird obligation to, like, talk about things, like, always. And I don't mind it, but sometimes it would be nice, to be able to just do some silly shit for a while. But don't get me wrong, I'm exactly what I was saying to you. But it is kind of a complicated dynamic, for me. Yeah, well, the thing that I think a lot of people may not understand is that, like, as far as, first of all, I don't really consider myself to have a, like, mission or anything, but, like, people ask me a lot about, like, my videos changing people's minds about things and whatnot, and normally, like, single time when I get that question, they specifically mean like stereotypical rednecks in the South changing their mind about like progressive issues. That's what they're asking me. And like, yes, I know that has happened. I have talked to people, and people have told me like that has happened at least a couple of times. But it's not like that. That's not that common. What is way, way, way more common is hearing from people from outside the type of everything who say that like my videos have influenced them to change their mind about like how they looked at and felt about the South in general. I made them realize that they're not all the same. The South's not a monolith or whatever. I've gotten that kind of response a shitload, and like that's important to me. Like because like I said, like growing up in that tourist town, like really it all kind of comes back to that for me. Like that's what's at the core of all of it really for me. Is more so than any one specific political issue or whatever. It's getting across to people or like, hey, we're not all the same, you know, or like it's the South isn't a monolith. There is diversity, like you said, there's diversity of white thoughts and opinions too. It's not just between black and whites in the South and whatever. It's like it's way more complicated than you realize, and don't assume things about people just based on where they're from, you know, and getting all of that across is really sort of like the foundational thing that I feel like most of my stuff, most of my work comes from really. So like stand up bits and all that, but also like been trying to get a TV show made for 4 years now, whatnot, still trying. And it's like with that, it probably won't be hardcore political in like a topical way, but it will absolutely be based around trying to show a different side of the South than you would typically see on a TV show, because everybody knows, it's usually some version of the same thing, fairly hillbilly, blue collar, comedy tour, something in that vein, and just simply doing something that is very, very Southern, but also not that very authentically Southern, coming from a different place that people are seen before. Like just that alone is a huge goal of mine, and very important to me. So really, it all kind of comes back to that for me, more so than any one like progressive talking point or anything like that. Although I do believe all this stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't see. I don't think this is
Okay. I don't go into any kind of discourse with someone who knows on the other side of you, automatically assuming from the very beginning that they are on the extreme polar opposite end of the spectrum from where you stand on it. Because I think that people do that a lot in America and maybe everywhere. But I give you a specific example from talking to my buddies back home. I still go back home every summer and go out on the lake. I can't this year because the world ended and all that. But as soon as we can go back, I will. You see all my buddies I grew up with and everything, and a lot of them are like me. A lot of them are totally on the same page as me politically, and then some of them are not. But we've grown up together, we're really good friends. Some of them are conservatives. One of those trips, my good friend comes up to me, and we're standing there drinking beers, where he walks up and he's like, "Trey, I'm just like, my thing is, I just don't understand what they're doing. It's like, you know me your whole life. I work full time, I'm married, I'm a family man, I got 2 little girls, I never broke the law, yada yada. Like, I just don't understand why you think that I shouldn't be able to own a gun? And I was like, I don't think that, Toby. I don't at all think that. Like, even a little bit. I was like, you absolutely should be able to own a gun. I was like, all I think is that there are plenty of people in this country who probably shouldn't, and we should, try to take steps to keep insane or violent people or whatever from being able to have a gun, because there are plenty of people who shouldn't have one, but you're not one of them. And I said that, and he was like, well, I mean, yeah, I agree with you about that. We're trying to do definitely people don't, shouldn't have a gun or whatever. And so we ended up realizing and finding out that, like, we actually were, like, this far apart, like, barely, if at all. Like, we were pretty much in agreement about how we felt about guns. But we started from the position of, like, he thinks that I want to take everybody's guns, and I think he wants to give every eighth grader an assault rifle. You know what I mean? And neither one is true. And I think that people do that a lot. You find out that somebody's on the other side of an issue from you, and in your mind, you automatically put them in the extreme. When most people are not extreme, just period. And I think that skews a lot of the conversations and stuff from the very beginning. It can't even get started because people start from the wrong place. So I feel like that's some advice I would give people. Just try to keep that in mind, as you're going about your life and dealing with people. And I think that it will lead to, better relationships and things actually getting done and all that good shit. I would hope.
So, what's next? What projects
Stand up comedy is illegal. And, if we're being honest about it, I mean, you think about it, live stand up comedy requires a, large number of people to be put close together in a relatively small space, and stand up comedy, right here, really could not be less essential, right? So, like, I hope not. I would love for you to get back up as soon as it's actually safe and all that. But, like, I personally think it's going to be a long time before we can do live shows again. And that sucks, but, I've already had nothing I can do about it. So the tour is suspended indefinitely until things hopefully go back to normal. So, with that in mind, and again, like I said, we're trying to get a TV show made. I've sold multiple shows and written multiple scripts that just didn't reach the finish line, didn't get shot. I had some that I was still working on. Those are also now just, put on pause until things go back to normal. So we have, me and the guys that are recording have our podcast that we've been doing this whole time with Well Read. That's Well RED, Well Read podcast that comes out every week. We're still doing that via Zoom. Still, making videos and stuff, trying to do some different things now with the lockdowns and like Zoom sketches and whatnot, just putting them out on the social pages. And the only real, legitimate thing I have to plug is I have a Facebook Watch show with this media company called Attention Media, and the show is called South and Off, and it's kind of similar to the format of the book. Each little episode, like 5-minute episodes, and each episode is about one particular subject, and it's some Southern specific, topic or phenomenon or perception or whatever. And we did one season last year, and we just filmed the Unconfined. I set up a studio in my house out here in Burbank and filmed it all myself and animated and graphics and all that. But we're putting that out starting next week, starting off season 2. And so, like, this year, there's topics from, like, the myth of the Southern Belle, coal country, conservative versus conservation, diversity, Southern diversity. As I mentioned earlier, that was the subject of one of the episodes, and Southern innovations, contributions that the South has made to, like, America as a whole. So just, and then a few more. So those are subjects and covered, and those will come out weekly starting Monday, the 11th, next Monday. So South and Off season 2. And then after that, man, well, if I don't know, hopefully something, he's trying to keep busy, most of them sitting around and trying to keep my wife and I from losing our minds with these children who can't go to school, anymore, trying to homeschool them and just maintain our sanity, basically. Yeah, I don't mind. I honestly don't mind being at home. I love my family. I love being at home with them. But yeah, the uncertainty of it all and not knowing, what is going to happen. But hell, everybody's in that position right now, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. So, I'll be all right. I don't know, just, I guess everybody just try to, keep your head down and soldier on. Like, weird people might not pick up on this and might say otherwise, but I actually am, like, ultimately an optimist about things, and I always have been. And I think part of that is because, like, I grew up in the rural South. Like, the rural South has still got a lot of work left to do and a lot of progress left to be made, but I don't care what anybody says. Just in my lifetime, it has changed in an insane amount for the better. I mean, like, I never ever would believe that at this point in my life, like when I was a teenager or whatever, that gay marriage would even be legal, let alone, like, kind of almost normalized at this point. It's a good thing, but I never, you told me that when I was 18 and I lived this life in the States, I told you you're out of your goddamn mind. Like, but it's happened, and people in my hometown, are not, they come along this way, and I know that for a fact, and I believe that ultimately one way or another, we will continue to progress in the right direction. We'll pick up and speed bumps aside. So, I just think everybody just hang in there and we'll get it figured out eventually.
Holy shit, this is it. Finish it. The race of a lifetime. Especially in the liberal South. As I said, the southern states are a group of siblings from family of alcoholics fucked up, and that means y'all are the ones who cleaned up in November, got your shit together, and now you're going for your dream job. The rest of us are so proud. Even if we're not all doing this good, Tennessee got back to Alabama, smoking bats off, and the 92 Astro band, just in there hollering like, "Can I smoke it in my butt?" And that's how Tennessee because they're going some of us in real bad shape. Y'all are doing great. We're so proud of it because we know what kind of future this will be for the rest of the region. Imagine the future for somebody contacting from the South and they don't say, "Oh, you're from the South, nowadays it's your dog's name. Oh, you're from the South, but you're top dog, carburetor. Oh, you're from the South, and you keep looking on the party." Normally, this is what I tell people to leave their shit at the door. That would be a problem. You just give you the fear, but these do not bring them. I would say I'm being silly, but there's some serious implications. If you don't believe me to explain to you, just know that I'm behind you and I believe in you 100% to deliver us into the promised land, baby. Crave, how did I do? Drink Crowder, you nailed it, son. Just because.
of his accent, the buttercream dream has been told everything from a slack-jawed yokel all the way to a backward, toothless, knuckle-dragging, dipshit, stinky troglodyte. And I don't know about you, but I've had her here all I can say. Hey, Georgia, we done told the world back in November that no more does the Make America Great Again asshole have a monopoly on our fine state, baby. And we got another chance on January 5th to keep the extra point and take this motherfucker to the house. I don't know about you, but what a great dream. Pretty damn tired of people thinking they know all about me just because they see me in a trucker cap talking with this sweet, sexy southern twang that I got going. If you ask me, it's about time we start putting an end to that shit. If you like the buttercream dream, what would be real nice is the next time someone comes up to me trying to blame a region that they don't care to know nothing about for all of the country's problems, to be able to look at that son-bitch in the face and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm from Georgia. We're a blue state now, baby. Woo!
Okay.
Social issues are really important and worth fighting for, but maybe the left wing and the right wing should consider uniting on economic issues and corporate needs. We agree a lot more than people realize on these issues. Then we can go back to picking place. People on the left need to stop assuming that our side will immediately get duped by the right wing ability to raise its taxes. Sure, be extremely cautious, but what if we trick them into voting to raise their own wages or giving themselves free health care? I don't want anyone thinking and telling people to vote with politics. Their politicians are the worst people on earth. If you don't hold hands with extremist groups, you obviously fight them. But what if there are right-wing voters who also hate corporate and corruption? Now, he got ratio for this, to be fair, every bank tweet this ratio, largely because every group this might appeal to either hates him or hates the caveats he includes. Bank has a largely left liberal audience who is not going to be favorable to the idea of working with right-wing people, and the people who are most in favor of this red-brown alliance bullshit are like Jimmy Dore fans, and Jimmy Dore fans hate Jim more than anyone else in life. So, also, conservatives who might otherwise like this are put off by the fact that Jen is explicitly stating that they don't want people voting for Republicans. So, this tweet was always designed to maximize the number of people who dislike. Okay? Jen seems to have a habit for that, which is pretty impressive. Let's just talk about this. I've talked about this before. None of the exceeds, but I need to be clear on this, okay? Yeah, it is effective, okay? Work together towards solutions, not because we share problems. When people on the right and people on the left agree that problems, they could have wildly different solutions to that problem. And the solution is ultimately what matters. Because agreeing on a problem means nothing if you have radically different approaches to how you can address it. For example, Nazis and communists both have a problem with the elite. However, if you look a little bit beyond that very superficial agreement, you will find that the right-leaning people have a problem with it because they think we love with Jews, and the communists have a problem with love and government flavor of life. So the problem may be shared, the solutions differ. Now, the problem that I have with this fundamentally is that historically, people on the right who claim to want economic populism never do anything about it. Ever. Ever. They never do anything about it. How many times do I have to hear this from people? They're like, yeah, corporate media is great, the wealthy control everything, we need to do something about it. And then they vote for Trump. What? The multi-billionaire bureaucrat who is friends with every single person accused of being in the deep state? The person who was at Clinton's wedding? Butt buddies with that statement? That's your anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, pro-economic populism position? The guy who cut the corporate tax rate, but then cut wealthy people's taxes and then allowed middle class taxes to rise back up again after he was done? What? And then why don't they support Bernie Sanders? Because he was broke. Well, I'll tell you this much. If Bernie Sanders who pro BLM and pro trans people is enough to make you abandon your pro economic populist position, then you don't actually believe in economic populism. Okay? You don't. You cannot pretend you're some kind of serious hardliner on fighting for the working class when somebody like Bernie fucking Sanders shows up and you have an issue with him who's socially correct. If that's the case, then you're clearly going to call any economically popular candidate you can find, except the ones who are already on the right. They're not working together towards these solutions. The right has a history of taking pro-economic populist positions in order to take people who are disaffected, otherwise entrenched by socialist ideas, onto the right. The Nazis did this in the 1920s and 30s very effectively. Early plans for policy from the Nazi Party listed out a bunch of colloquial things that they never ever did after they came to power. Mussolini did this as well. Tucker Carlson does this all the time. Tucker Carlson pretends to be some kind of pro-working class, anti-elite. Not only is Tucker Carlson the definition of silver spoon wealth, an heir to a fortune, fortune, bow tie in the knee, the guy who probably lived in that little show he does, who's in the wood shop, he eats this guy has never shook hands before. This guy puts on gloves, okay, before he enters like a grocery. Alright, this is not a person who gives a fuck about the world. And he said so before. He said it. He'll do anything the billionaire masters do. He has acknowledged this. But he pretends to be pro-working class. You know why? Because people on the right are desperate for economic progressive populism, and they don't know where to go. So if you want to work together with people who are on the right towards economically progressive, stop saying we need to capitulate on progressivism. You're so right. Point out to them that they're giving up economic progressivism because they're that opposed to woke corporation BLM advertising. Hold your fucking ground and a fucking act. Stuff like healthcare reform. And the only reason conservatives don't vote left so they can work those. If they were subject to an ongoing their beneficiaries who rise and say that actually the right is to push for these economic. But they're not. Remember those people who said that the Republicans were going to flank Democrats from the left? How did that work? What did Trump do with flank Democrats from the left? Nothing. Zero things. They'll posture at it, they'll talk about it, but they won't ever do it because they are ultimately, completely, and absolutely dedicated in their worship to the ruling class. Yeah, Jimmy Dore does keep saying. Jimmy Dore, the guy who Sam Stevens pointed out that Trump winning needs to put a point with the Supreme Court judges, Jimmy Dore laughing out, saying there's no way that would happen. And Jimmy Dore, great political analyst. If you want economic populism, you gotta go left, baby. If you want to, if you're like a far right dude, you want to work with me for this healthcare, great. You can work with me by voting for socialist candidates. That can be how we work together. What the fuck do you want me to do overall? You think we're going to get better healthcare by convincing you to vote for right-wing candidates? How exactly do you think that's going to happen? I know the Democrats aren't exactly, foreign advocates for progressive economic reform, but they're better than the Republicans are. And within the Democratic Party, there are people who actually do seem to care about economic reform, like the Justice Minister. Vote for them. If you're a right-wing person who doesn't want BLM, what? You want economic populism? Sorry, buddy, you're going to have to choose, because the right is never going to give you economic populism. So you need to ask yourself, do you hate wokeism so much that you would condemn you and your children and your children's children to an eternal life of debt slavery? Is that how much you dislike wokeism? Is that really the line you're drawing this on? And if the answer is yes, then you don't care about economic populism. Simple as that. If that's if that's the line you're going to draw, then you don't care. Then why would I waste any time over it over here? If your principles are that flimsy, seriously. So no, right-wing populism is bullshit because they never act on it. It's just a way to get disaffected people over to the right and then get them to agree with all the pre-existing right-wing people. Which is why all these right populists end up voting in line with all the same fucking neocon adjacent economic principles the moment they get the opportunity. Seriously. Look at the difference between the populist rhetoric used by the new Trump era of candidates and then look at what they vote. They don't vote on raising taxes. They don't push for anything along those lines. They vote for the exact same economic austerity, pro-corporate positions that Republicans and Democrats have been voting on for ages. So it's completely phony. At least I can trust people like Bernie Sanders to push, and nothing else, for the concept of a better life for working class people. Okay? At least I know he can't single-handedly make Medicare law, but at least when he talks about it, he pushes for it, he normalizes it in discourse. We're not going to say Medicare law really into the national politics. He's pushed for it. Now hundreds of millions of people at least know basically what it is. That's good. Are people on the right doing that? No. No, actually, they're not. At all. I have to care about this right popular bullshit. You give a fuck who you vote in. You praise yourself, whatever important position you have. I actually saw people, I tweeted about it, and somebody tweeted like, I'll join you on the left. Stop calling you a racist. Stop being racist. What do you want? I don't know. Think the left do? That really, I like the inherent excellence of that tweet that I just randomly remember getting at some point, by the way, because it suggests that they are so uncommitted to economic populism that being called a racist will make them drop that position. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I'm super in favor of that kind of populism, you know. But like, if you hurt my feelings, I'll vote for candidates that will destroy the world. Period. To be fair, they got ratio for we're not pretending to be part of that. But man, it is indicative of what it's like. You know, like this is it's like okay, sure, whatever. Yes, in the eternal words, Cody Johnson. Left out a little too PC, so I changed my life about the economy, social justice, and yeah. True, and forever one. When I was 8 years old, I
I went to Disney World with my parents and my sister. It was the first time that everyone but my dad had visited in the country, and since we were flying all the way to Orlando, Florida, it was a big week since the only holidays we had before us involved a 2-hour car ride to the coast. Of course, we were all excited. America was new to us all, and we were going to what is arguably to this day the best theme park in the world. We were staying for 2 weeks, so we had plans to visit other places too, such as Universal Studios, the Kennedy Space Center, SeaWorld, Ripley's Believe It or Not, and so forth. But Disney World was the big one. It was like nothing we had ever experienced before. It was a world unto itself, where the worries and the stress that came with your daily life didn't matter. Every inch of this huge plot of land is designed to bring you joy. The friendly employees who go out of their way to make our day better. And the mascots who do their best to make sure that you believe that they're the real characters. The rides are a marvelous feat in engineering, made in such a way that the average person cannot possibly comprehend how they accomplish such things. As they immerse you into an experience that no theme park like anywhere else in this world can compete with. Personally, I love Echo Center more than Magic Kingdom. It felt educational, but at the same time, it was impressive in the way that it would teach you. It had cultural representation from across the world, which may not be entirely accurate, but it is still interesting for my little mind to experience. More than anything, though, it felt like it stepped into the future, and that's no surprise since Epcot was quite literally designed to be an interpretation of a utopian future. Its name being an acronym for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. My memories of that trip and Disney World in particular will always stay in the computer. It had such a profound effect that when we were at the airport about to fly back here, I, my mother, and my sister cried knowing that we had to leave. I haven't been back to Disney World since then. I'm an adult now with limited disposable income, so I could go there with my wife whenever I wanted to. We also live in America, so the cost of travel there wouldn't be too high. I sometimes thought that it might be nice to visit Disney World, to experience that sense of wonder once more, and visit Epcot Center to see into the future once more. There's a problem now, and that is that I'm old enough. I've learned more about the world and how things work, but most notably, I learned about Disney. I learned that they own hundreds of assets, including a third of the US film industry. But the employees of Disney World and all the theme parks are underpaid and overworked. I learned about its history of discrimination towards women and minorities, how they threatened to sue a daycare center for having a reading of their characters, or how they didn't allow a 4-year-old boy to fit into Spider-Man on his tombstone after he died from leukemia. Despite the fact that Disney has played a huge role in pretty much everyone's childhood, it's hard to look forward to the romantic angel in your head, but there's simply a company that's only intention is to make children happy. They're remorseless, intent on devouring as many companies as they can to grow to an even more incomprehensible size than they already are. Happily stepping on the lives of its workers and siphoning money from its consumers in exchange for mangled imitations of their childhood memories. Eventually, it dawned. I can't go back to Disney World. If I want to keep that memory in my head of how it felt to be there as a child, I have no choice but to stay away from it or risk tainting one of the most precious moments of my life. I don't want to see the stormtroopers from Star Wars marching around the park. I don't want to know how vastly overpriced the concession stands are. I don't even think about how the person in the Donald Duck costume is roasting alive in the Florida heat. As much as I believe that knowing all of these awful things about Disney is good and necessary, there's part of me that wants to be selfish and keep that moment of my life where I have nothing to worry about alive, and no amount of nostalgia could possibly compare to it. I can't go back to Disney World, and neither can you. In the past few years, the general public has developed an intense love affair with nostalgia. This has been made evident by the absurd amount of media content that has been produced, whether that's remakes, reboots, spiritual successors, revivals of long-dormant franchises, or even existing franchises which seem to be forever ongoing, such as the Marvel or Star Wars Extended Universe. There's also been an influx of brand new media that's designed to scratch your nostalgic itch by being based in the past. And in some cases, there are products that feel like they've been designed from the ground up to reward audiences for recognizing past properties. There's even a wide selection of video game franchises that have been revived and remade, some of which have had drastic overhauls compared to their original, whereas less older revivals have been given simple visual upgrades to meet the standards of modern hardware, but this has had some mixed results. Nostalgic properties appeal to an audience's need for familiarity, comfort, and even validate your personal emotional investment in media. Of course, movies and TV shows aren't created out of the goodness of the producer's heart to make people happy. Just like with any other form of media on the mass market, the desire for profit always takes precedent to artistic expression. And this is the key reason why we've been seeing such a vast amount of productions that are designed to appeal to that familiarity. That familiarity works to the advantage of content producers though. Marketing an original intellectual property, or IP, is a risky and costly endeavor, and it's something that which many studios have become skittish about. Media is also informing our expectations of the future as well. Throughout the 80s in particular, it was extremely common to see movies which tried to envision the kind of world that we would live in the future, whether that be utopian or dystopian. It also wasn't uncommon to see the inclusion of futuristic technologies, many of which people thought we'd never seen in our lifetimes, but a good amount of them have come to fruition, and in some cases better than their past portrayals. However, even though we have these amazing technologies and more, the conditions in which we've been given them are less than favorable, and usage of them often involves some ethically murky catch, such as allowing the manufacturer to sell and use your personal information as they see fit. Nostalgia clearly has its positives and negatives. Sometimes we'll experience something that scratches our itch in the right ways, but despite the growing cynicism towards it, what would be written or underwhelming or failed revivals of certain franchises, the public always seems to want more, even if it means possibly being let down. Ultimately, I want to ask, what are the underlying reasons behind our level of nostalgia? In what ways could it be potentially damaging? Why is it that younger generations, namely Gen Z, Millennials, and to some extent Generation X, are its largest consumers? Why are we so enamored with the portrayals of the future found in old movies? Most importantly, though, I want to address why our love of nostalgia is symptomatic of our fears for the future, and how returning to the past has become a popular way in which we can forget about the struggles that we face in our daily lives. From anything as personal to work to something as existential as an impending climate catastrophe. To properly assess our ongoing obsession with nostalgia, I first want to talk about how the media facilitates and encourages our desire to attach ourselves and even our identities to movies and TV shows, and how the fact that their staggering mass appeal is emblematic for our ravenous desire for familiarity and nostalgia. I think it's safe to say that at this point in time, we've been exposed to an overwhelming amount of nostalgic media and properties. Most of the movies that we've seen released in the past few years have either been sequels from existing franchises, spin-offs, reboots, or remakes. This can also include the relatively recent phenomenon of extended universe based on the franchise, most notably Marvel and Star Wars. Regardless of the form of media that you consume, you will have some way of being involved in the franchise. You can go to the movie theater to watch the tentpole blockbuster films that serve as a nexus in which all of these stories converge, much as the Avengers movies and the episodic Star Wars entries, but if you wish, you can also immerse yourself deeper in the lore and backstories of tertiary characters that exist within these universes. Such examples being Loki, WandaVision, or The Mandalorian, each of which contains plotlines that are linked to the main movies but exist to either complement the universe or to be enjoyed as its own entity. All of these things exist on the appeal of familiarity, whether they're an imitation of something you love or simply based in the worlds that you've seen previously. One of the successful franchising rivals has been the Transformers movie, directed by Michael Bay, the man who's blown up more people and vehicles in the US military and doesn't believe in the existence of platforms. Transformers is a franchise that originally conceived as a way to sell toys to children in the 80s, but when they developed, they found another option to see it again. This time being where you can tell what's happening. Given that the audience for Transformers were adults, I also gave the studio the opportunity to stuff each new entry with an ungodly amount of product placements, many of which being about as subtle as one of the Paul brothers in a monastery. Speaking of unsubtle product placements, I would like to talk about this video's sponsor, NordVPN. You didn't see that kind of video. I personally believe that everyone should be using a VPN pretty much all the time.
Because este computador vai com o VPN. Não tive as línguas que é uma licença de vais, né? Entrar.
Your personal information is being given away without you knowing it. NordVPN allows you to protect your information from would-be hackers or even large tech companies who know all about your crippling ASMR addiction. It's excellent for staying protected when you're on open Wi-Fi networks too. So when you buy the cheapest thing on the menu at a coffee shop so you can use their internet for free for hours, you don't have anything to worry about other than avoiding the judgmental gaze of the releases. NordVPN is a great and simple way to keep yourself protected online. By routing your connection on a choice of over 5,200 servers across 60 countries, so you can connect somewhere close to you just for some protection, or you can connect to another country to unlock parts of the internet that otherwise wouldn't be available to you or observer. When I connect to a server in the UK, I get access to shows and movies and networks that aren't available in the US, such as Gogglebox, an absurdly popular reality television show about people watching television. What, did you think that British TV was all David Attenborough documentaries and Doctor Who? No, we produced a lot of stuff, like a lot, and it's popular, just like Love Island. They did have some actual good stuff on it, although it can't be in the US, FYI. You can also use it across multiple platforms, including iOS, Android, macOS, and much more. So here's the
Com segurança, mas depois não vender essa coisa aí, depois isso ia ser mais difícil.
Tu já desligaste o vídeo? Estava a estranhar, estava a ficar tudo bem com
Mas já sou
links in the description, and while you're at it, thank you for supporting the channel. Well, don't do that, probably busy. I don't know, maybe something. I'm not your boss, just completely wrong. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Familiar with franchises, all of you are
quer dizer, já tinha uma hora mais cedo.
successful. In 2019, the films in the box office weren't based on an existing movie franchise or conquest. Those two movies were Buzz by director Jordan Peele and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by director Quentin Tarantino. The top 10 movies from that year were all existing franchises, 7 of which were owned and distributed by Disney, something that we'll talk about soon. In 2020, however, we did see more variety in kind of films that performed well in the box office. Although there was no shortage of movies based on existing properties, there was more space for original intellectual properties. You may have guessed, though, that this was partly made possible by the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, for the majority of the year, most of the movie theaters were kept empty. Productions were heavily delayed, and any films that had completed their production had their release dates delayed by many studios who were reluctant to release them on streaming platforms or on demand, out of fear of losing money or ticket sales, piracy, and possibly jeopardizing their already fraught relationships with the movie theater industry. This also happened to be the first year for a very long time when we didn't see the release of the Marvel or Star Wars property. It was honestly encouraging to see audiences experiment with movies that they otherwise wouldn't have gone out their way to see. I can definitely see why when somebody's paying $14 for each ticket and an ungodly amount of money on drinks and snacks, they might not want to take the risk by watching something new that they may not like.
Os americanos não só pagam muito por um bilhete, como não percebem, os americanos e ingleses não só não pagam muito por bilhetes, como não percebem o conceito da cinema sem bebidas e sem comida.
Pois
Não
é,
percebem o conceito.
isso
Ah, castelo X. Ah, somos 5 pessoas e é uma despesa imensa, mas às vezes não bilhetes assim. Não são baratos, mas para as pessoas.
For these studios spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a movie is funnily enough safe bet.
Se calhar, quando tiveres um bocadinho, não tem que ser nem hoje nem imediatamente. Pendurava-se estas prateleiras para não ficarem. Ainda não está.
Esse vermelho não é muito claro.
Muito claro.
Eu também não gostei de ficar com isso pintado.
I'm a huge fan of the sitcom Arrested Development, and I think its first few seasons are some of the best comedies ever produced. If you can look past the parts that haven't aged too well, and if you know what this means, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I and many others thought the show was cancelled far too early, but when I heard that Netflix was going to revive it for a fourth season, I was beyond excited. Unfortunately, it ended up being a letdown. Even though the original cast and crew returned, it just couldn't reach the same heights. And despite it having some great moments, it ultimately felt hollow. When they returned for season 5 and the show became a shadow of its former self, I just wanted it to end, and thankfully it did. But as they say, too much of a good thing is bad for you. There are rare cases where it can work out, like with the Breaking Bad movie El Camino. And even though it wasn't bad, I'm sure anyone that's watched it and the show would agree that when I say it didn't feel like it was a story that needed to be told, and we would have been fine without it. There seems to be the case that the only medium that's less prone to failure when it comes to reboots is video games. In the last few years, we've seen a slew of old titles that have been updated with modern gameplay mechanics and given a fidelity upgrade. But those aspects serve to enhance the player's experience by making the game more intuitive and immersive. A good example of this being Final Fantasy VII Remake, which compared to its 1997 counterpart is a completely different game, but it still manages to capture the feeling of nostalgia by breathing life into its world and characters, which were previously voiceless, blocking 3D models on top of a 2D background. Non-interactive media doesn't always benefit from these upgrades, though. For example, there's a charm inherent to seeing things like the old special effects in movies compared to what they are now. Audiences simply aren't impressed by photorealistic CGI anymore. So looking back and seeing the ingenuity that went into making some of the most iconic effects ever produced is so much more impressive than just thinking about how a horribly overworked FX studio rendered all the creases and fouls his chin. It also is the reason why these blockbuster movies became such an important landmark in cinema. Star Wars: A New Hope wasn't expected to become the most recognizable movie franchise in the world, but because of how new and groundbreaking it felt, it found a place in the hearts of millions. The original trilogy was quite impossible, and even though many blockbuster movies since have tried to recreate what George Lucas seemingly did by accident, instead we get clone after clone. Wars. To me, these blockbuster movies are like McDonald's food. You know exactly what to expect when you get a meal from its taste to its appearance. You might even take some comfort in it, like eating a home-cooked meal by a local. However, it's also something that isn't new, or perhaps even challenging. There aren't any flavors which could potentially amaze or offend your taste. It's just McDonald's. It's supposed to be buy when you only wake up from work and you're too tired to cook, but don't want to spend too much, and you know what you're getting into. I'm not trying to insult people for liking these movies, or even McDonald's for that matter. My point is that the safety blanket of movies designed by committee has created the circumstances in which creativity within the film industry is stagnated, and that's predominantly from our need to have our nostalgia handed to, especially when it comes to the Star Wars movies, a series which aggressively panders to their audience's needs to have their fandom validated. by including other irrelevant and sometimes nonsensical callbacks to previous entries in the franchise. One thing that's become all too common with the continuation and revivals of nostalgic franchises, though, is how they're reacted to, especially on the internet. Right-wing reactionaries are the first to complain about any updates or removals from the movies and these TV shows that remind them of how the world is a more progressive place than it was when these products were first released, such as if the producers decided to be more inclusive with their casting, or women being given more significant roles, or even if they're not as overtly sexualized as they once were. You'll see a lot of this pushback on YouTube because obviously it's clickbait and people want to have their regressive beliefs validated by a personality who portrays themselves as an authority on the matter, a true fan, but it's a bit more than that. It's no secret that many of the film and television shows that were produced in the past had little to no concern about being inclusive. Like how in the original Star Wars trilogy, they were going from planet to planet, seeing all these different life forms, but for some reason there was only one black guy with a significant role. When The Force Awakens was announced, there was a backlash at the thought that John Boyega, a black man, could potentially be the new main character throughout the planned trilogy, and that by doing so, it was seen as pandering to progressive audiences and the leftist agenda. Of course, it eventually transpired that Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, was actually a Jedi and going to essentially be the next Luke Skywalker, which absolutely heavily misfired. Obviously, I'm kidding. It was even worse, and they spent the next 5 years complaining about Earth being too strong. The point is, though, that the inclusion of more modern and progressive ideas is a barrier for people like this, who believe that their thirst for nostalgia is tainted by the present, but they want a product that's identical to the one that was made in the past, where inclusivity and political correctness was barely factored into the production of these movies. Seeing their favorite franchise back in the movie theater or on their TV screens is one thing, but to people like reactionaries, it's equally important that the media they consume reminds them of the time when they were younger and didn't have to contend with the world around them. Nostalgia is already a blindfold which helps you forget about the modern world, but in the case of reactionaries, they basically want a time machine that transports them back into their childhood, where they were forgiven for their ignorance, rather than now where they constantly have to come up with excuses for it. Movies aren't the only products that cater to our desire for nostalgia though. There are countless other properties which are based in past decades, mostly the 80s, an era which has become heavily romanticized by people who weren't even alive at the time. Whether it's shows like Stranger Things or Flow, the rise of the retro wave aesthetic, movies like Ready Player One, which worships the 80s to the point of being parodied, and the dozens of revivals of movies and TV shows from the era. There's also genres like synthwave and future funk, music made with modern technology is designed to be an homage to the music of the 80s, which personally I'm very fond of. In fact, I'm playing them in the background right now. Nostalgia doesn't exist just for the sake of the people who lived in the eras they were based on. Given how much past decades are romanticized, it's understandable that younger generations will become intrigued by what made it special, and it's become extremely popular from the media to the overall style. Just look at how many young people dress in 90s era clothing nowadays, with flannels, baggy sweaters, and stonewashed jeans. By the way, that taken from in here, but high-waisted jeans, idiots, and always happy. I know that's not speak. Fashion trends have been cyclical for a long time now. In the early to mid 2000s, the 80s made a comeback, as did the 70s. And I'm sure, given enough time, the early 2000s will be with us. And God help us all when we start dressing like this. It's almost like we're in a time loop that when really not trying to break. And the further we get into the future, the more eager we are to stay in the past. It's worth bearing in mind, though, that the past was not as great as many people believe it to be. The 80s in particular was an awful era. Countries like America and the UK destroyed collective power in exchange for individualist ideals thanks to Reaganism and Thatcherism. The Cold War was still raging. The CIA introduced crack cocaine to black communities while funding Nicaraguan countries in the process, the AIDS and HIV epidemic was completely ignored, costing the lives of hundreds of people, all because the government didn't want to associate with homosexuals. Sexism, homophobia, and racism were all alive and well. The hairstyles were terrible. The fashion was mostly terrible. The cars looked like they were designed in Microsoft Paint with the minefield. The movies were bad, TV was bad, and before you say, well, the music was good, we gotta remind you that this is the same decade that brought you Don't Stop Believing by Journal. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit too harsh. The 80s did have some good music, but in general, ridiculous stuff. And that's a fact that is heavily glossed over when people reminisce about it. You may watch a show like Stranger Things and think to yourself that things were so simple back then. But no, they were messy, complicated, and they were far greater monsters than the demigod. The 80s in particular was also a time where people dreamed of what the future would be like. This came in different flavors too, like in Back to the Future 2, where Marty McFly visited 2015 and saw the amazing technologies that had been made. All there were more pessimistic dystopian shows, like the ones found in Labour. Interestingly enough, though, both envisioned around the time when the world would be deeply entrenched in hyper-capitalist ideals, and no matter where you turn, you would be subject to advertising. The funny thing is, a lot of the things that we've seen in movies from these eras actually came to fruition, and you could argue that they were inspired by them. Just think about it. We have super powerful computers in our pockets that can take photos and send messages, make video calls, play games, browse the internet, and more. I've also heard that you can make phone calls with them too, but being a millennial before it comes to call something make an appointment, goes into the old house of bread. We can control a bunch of devices in our households using our voice thanks to home assistants. Robot vacuums that can map out and clean your entire house. Order pretty much anything you want online and have it arrive at your door within hours. And TV shows, music, and movies available anywhere you want, whenever, instantly. Despite all this, though, we still come to the past. Just consider the fact that people lament the loss of video rentals. So, Blockbuster Video was a huge franchise at one point, with over 9,000 stores around the world. But how many are left now? Just one. The funny thing is, a lot of the things that we've seen in movies from these eras actually came to fruition, and you could argue that they were inspired by them. Just think about it. We have super powerful computers in our pockets that can take photos and send messages, make video calls, play games, browse the internet, and more. I've also heard that you can make phone calls with them too, but being a millennial before it comes to call somebody to make an appointment, goes into the house of bread. We can control a bunch of devices in our households using our voice thanks to home assistants. Robot vacuums that can map out and clean your entire house. Order pretty much anything you want online and have it arrive at your door within hours. And TV shows, music, and movies available anywhere you want, whenever, instantly. Despite all this, though, we still come to the past. Just consider the fact that people lament the loss of video rentals. So, Blockbuster Video was a huge franchise at one point, with over 9,000 stores around the world. But how many are left now? Just one, in Bend, Oregon, which stands as a monument to technological progress. As someone who got to experience these stores while growing up, though, I have to admit, I miss them too. When I was a kid, I used to walk into my local rental store on a Friday after school with my mother to pick out a movie or video game. It was exciting to discover new things, and even though in the modern times we have a far greater selection that's not only available to us instantly and cheaper, I miss that experience. Why? Because when I was a kid, it was a time where whenever I sat down to watch a movie for a couple of hours, I didn't feel like I do as an adult, where I feel a kind of guilt because I can't shake the feeling that I should be using my time to do something productive. Let me ask you one thing. When was the last time that you did something like a Zoom call or played a video game on your phone and thought to yourself, wow, I can't believe I have this incredible technology in the palm of my hands for free? Probably never, right? If anything, you've probably thought to yourself, this kind of sucks. But the quality of the video calls is shaky and lagging, and the games you play on your phone and other systems are really the predatory features that are designed from the ground up to psychologically manipulate you into spending as much money as possible. I'm a big fan of fighting games myself. There's something I grew up playing and I still enjoy, but back when I was a kid, there was a case where all of the characters were included or unlockable by playing the game. But nowadays, if you want those extra characters, you have to pay for it. And by the time that they're all released, you can end up paying more than double, triple, or more than the original game costs. We live in the future of incredible invention, which makes it incredibly hard to embrace despite how amazing they may be. I don't think people can be faulted for being jaded with technology. As great as it is to have something like search engines that gives us access to more information than people in the past could possibly conceive, it's disheartening to know that in exchange for this, we have to give up part of our privacy. We're all watched over by machines and loving words, but the more we become aware of this, the more we want to hide from their gaze. It's also disheartening to see that despite such advancements, the companies sold incremental upgrades for certain technologies every year. The biggest offenders being phone manufacturers. You may have heard this term already, but this way of producing products is called planned obsolescence, in which products are designed with what is essentially an expiry date. That isn't to say that they will stop working after a set period of time, but they will begin to underperform. And thanks to marketing, you'll be made to feel insecure about still having last year's model. The thing is, though, this is completely unnecessary. Yes, technology was growing quickly, but do you really think that extra lens couldn't have been included on last year's iPhone? This method of marketing new technology basically validates you for buying the latest model, and only a year later makes you feel foolish for not waiting for the next. And in return for your impatience, you get operating system updates to slow down your phone, something that Apple admits it's doing purposefully to preserve aging batteries, a problem that would be a problem if they and other manufacturers allow consumers to buy and replace batteries with ease. Smartphones can now cost you over $1,000, an insane price tag to say the very least. And it's beginning to feel like the more we spend on trying to embrace the future, the quicker we end up lagging behind because it'll never be enough. Phone manufacturers could release models that will last you much longer than they currently do, but they don't have to because that's not profitable. They're not the only ones guilty of this, though. Car manufacturers do yearly updates, affordable clothing with lower end quality, so it gets thrown away much faster. Many other electronics aren't easy enough to repair, and it's only recently that long life light bulbs have become brought to the standard, even though we've had the technology to achieve similar rates for hundreds of years at this point. This attitude towards technology has played a huge part in our journey towards climate catastrophe. All these old electronics and materials don't just disappear when we're done with them. With electronics in particular, they're either left in a gigantic landfill or their more valuable components are stripped, with the leftovers being burned, usually in some economically deprived Middle Eastern country, where the noxious fumes rise both into the air and the lungs of its citizens. Climate change is happening, and it's the fault of humanity and its endless need for consuming goods. Our way of living is unsustainable, and it's telling that between 1988 and 2015, only 100 companies were responsible for 71% of all greenhouse gas emissions, the majority of which being oil and coal producers. The world could be coming to an end sooner than we think, and that's a terrifying prospect, especially since there are so many people who still refuse to believe that it's happening or know it's happening and don't care. I think this is among the many reasons why younger generations love nostalgia so much. The present can feel like an unbearable place to live at times, and the future seems so bleak that it's hard to envision it being anything other than a bad place. It's comforting to return to media from the 80s and 90s, but
Yeah, tipo, mais um pouco. Nada, estou a discutir com o Vinho. Yeah. O gajo está farto de dizer, tem umas ideias giras, mas o gajo é estúpido. Mas estou bem. E está a falar dos Estados Unidos. E agora está a dizer, há gabinete.
The oldest millennials have just reached 40 years of age. Even though we still think that we're in high school and they've been tired of as a generation, millennials have gained 4.8% of all wealth. Around the same time, Generation X had 9%, whereas boomers had a massive 21% of all wealth. Millennials are the largest and most educated generation in human history, yet they're also the poorest, and it looks like that trend is going to continue with Gen Z. It is no surprise at all that younger generations feel powerless against the world, their government, their employers, and even their future. So I don't think people can blame for wanting comfort by revisiting the past, to feel like they did when they were a child, unaware of what's in store for them. I too miss the days where I could wake up on Saturday morning, watch a few cartoons, and eat a big bowl of cereal that's loaded with sugar, instead of this horrible menagerie program that I eat these days. I miss winter storms. I miss having no obligations. I miss being ignorant about what part of the world to be. I miss Disney World. Nostalgia allows us to escape from the present and our future. You could argue the same for a lot of media, but nostalgia in particular is designed around harkening to the past. It's a way for us to avoid reckoning with our current circumstances and, to an extent, our mortality. The future may seem like a daunting prospect as things stand, but although you might think I'm being a downer, I genuinely have hope in what comes next. As I mentioned a moment ago, millennials are the largest generation that exists right now, and eventually, more of us will be in charge of making big decisions. Thankfully, a lot of us do care about where things are headed. The circumstances that we've been given by all the generations have emboldened young people across the world to take action and not be complacent. So when all those old politicians who are hell-bent on destroying the world inevitably die off, we can finally try to make the world a better place. It is frankly ridiculous that the people making decisions about our future won't be around long enough to see it happen. So that has to and will change. More people are becoming aware of how late-stage capitalism simply isn't working. And how
X desses gajos todos vão ter que
isn't
dizer a mesma coisa.
actually working blindly. And
Ele está todo otimista a dizer que mas os velhos vão todos sair do poder e tal, e a nossa geração foi subir ao poder, vai se
as for the artistic side of things, people want new things. That's been proven over and over again. Whether mistake is successful for comforting fallbacks and mediocrity. There's so many new voices and stories that are begging to solve. It's really time they were given more of a chance.
Isso é tipo, estás só política. É isso, pá.
One that we can truly enjoy our lives and not be filled with existential dread about what comes next. We want a world where technology can improve our lives without having to give away intimate details about ourselves. We want to feel as though things are fair and just, but as things stand, it can seem like the only way to emulate a sense of comfort is through the rose-tinted glasses of the past. I think like anything else, nostalgia is best enjoyed in moderation. It's easy to get wrapped up in the glory of the past. We can't forget that the future is coming, whether we like it or not, and it's up to us to solve the world's problems. You might be surprised what we can accomplish given enough time and effort.
The world always sucks.
Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I would also like to say thank you for my patrons. As you can see, scrolling down here, these are all the wonderful people that are offering a little bit each month just to keep this channel going. I'd also like to give a special shout out to all of my patrons that donate $5 or more each month. That goes to Eleanor, Enrique Gutierrez, Eric Espinoza, Nathan Ferry, Chris Smothers, Merger Fashionable, come on, Alina, hello, it's Leo, James Bees, Latins, Mandy Spectre, James, Martina, Sander Panda, Ashley Platypus, C.B. Hart, Kevin Colbert, Logan Rowan, Sharp Bay, Nostra Khan, Betsy Weiss, Fraser, Marianne, Vicky Wanadonna, sorry if I got that wrong, Luke Pants, Tamara, my name is pronounced like me, Iris W, Ross Wheaton, Catherine, and Steve Marr. Thank you all very much for your support. It really does mean a lot to me. We keep this going, and thank you. I'm also going to start reading out the Patreon question of the video, which I've started doing recently. So if you'd like to have something answered, you can do so by clicking the Patreon. This time, I'm answering a question by GCU Grey Area. They want to know, I'd like to know how you're finding the healthcare system in the US, especially with this. We can compare it to the NHS. Does it do anything better? No, to be quite frank, US healthcare, it's about the same quality, the waiting times are about the same as well. You just have nicer waiting rooms and a good bill to go at the end of it. So, US healthcare is a mess. And for the people that say that you pay for quality when it comes to US healthcare, no, you absolutely don't. Medicare. But thank you very much once again. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.
Mas umas coisas aqui.
Influencers. They live incredible lives. They're beautiful. They have beautiful friends. They have fun every day. Tons of disposable income. They travel the world and they don't answer to anyone. They're what we think about when we fantasize about living a free life with no obligations. And they get to be adored by millions simply for living their best life. One of the influencers is kind of a portrait. It could be someone who blogs about their life, does pranks, does makeup tutorials, ASMR, or they could just be conventionally attractive. Influencers are almost on every social network that you can think of. But the platforms where they have the greatest presence are on TikTok, Instagram, and of course, right here on YouTube. Influencers are arguably some of the most watched, independently produced creators on YouTube right now, especially after Vine shut down and School of Refugees migrated to it to create longer form videos to move away from the 6-second format. And despite being in its infancy, TikTok has quickly become a place where hundreds of influencers have amassed huge audiences in a very short amount of time. This includes people such as Jake and Logan Paul, Gabby Hanna, David Dobrik, James Charles, Amanda Cerny, Mr. Beast, etc. But it also includes conventional celebrities such as The Rock, Cristiano Ronaldo, Selena Gomez, Kylie and Kendall Jenner, Beyonce, Irish, Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, and many, many more. For bigger, more established celebrities, places like Instagram serve as a way to peek into the lives outside of our television and movie screens. For a long time, the public has had a diverse interest in what the rich and famous do in their spare time. And there was a time where the only way that you could get an idea of this was through celebrity magazines or websites. But social networks have become a new window into their lives that feels a lot more intimate and personal, like they're a friend that you're catching up with. Under the surface of the glossy lives of influencers, there are forces at work to manipulate you, to make you question how you live your own life, the kind of things that you buy, what you wear, how you look, and even how you feel. You could say that this is simply a byproduct of looking at the lives of people who are supposedly happier than you. After all, I'm sure many of us have looked at a real friend's feed and begun to question how their life turned out so much more fun and interesting than yours. But influencers' careers thrive off the speaking. That envy helps them profit financially and socially. But these relationships can be maintained, there exists a political line between the people that are before. One that makes it so that audience feels like they have a genuine connection with them. the forever kept in business remain popular. So why are influences so popular? How are they affecting the lives of people, especially children and teenagers? What's the appeal of peering into the lives of the wealthy, and how does this desire to be like them damage people, making them feel envious, insecure, and alone? Let's take a look at why influences are making you miserable and how they're doing it on purpose.
Mas me desconcentrar, como assim? Desconcentrar.
In a survey conducted by the Harris Poll in 2019, 3,000 children across the UK, US, and China were asked what they wanted to be when they grew up. There were typical answers you'd expect, such as teacher, athlete, pop star, etc. But 30% of kids in the UK and 29% in the US wanted to be a YouTuber or blogger. This isn't all too surprising. Although YouTube is watched by billions of people of different age ranges across the world, children and teenagers spend most time on it more than any other age demographic. It used to be the case by parents who are criticized for letting television babysit their children, but it's not the case anymore. Children will now be given a tablet or their parents' phone to consume endless hours of content, all the while making their screens unspeakably beautiful. But I can understand why parents who are exhausted by looking at their being with seemingly endless reserves of energy might be inclined to look a moment at themselves and hand over a 6-inch screen to keep their child occupied, if only for an hour or two. Because of this, though, children are exposed to a lot of YouTubers and other influencers from a very young age. They could be watching all sorts of content, including cartoons that are automatically generated by an algorithm or utterly bizarre videos of adults dressed in cheap superhero and Disney costumes, where Elsa from Frozen is pregnant with Spider-Man's baby. Although thankfully that kind of content has been addressed in the past couple of years since it folded into the questionable. Most importantly though, bloggers and influencers are incredibly popular among children and teens. There's a reason why influencers are so appealing to younger audiences, and it's because they live their lives pretty much like they're forever known. They're what kids would like to be when they're an adult. Their lives are seemingly devoid of consequences, other than possibly being demonetized by YouTube. But even then, that only happens in extreme cases, since they only tend to punish smaller creators for making content that they deem unsuitable for advertisers, whatever that means. YouTube is such a great platform that reaches towards children for many reasons. One big one is that you don't require an account to watch its content, unlike Instagram and TikTok, which require you to be at least 13 years of age. And kids don't really care about ads, whereas adults are a bit more averse to them and may be likely to close a video should it contain too many ads or skip them if the function is being enabled. Because of the age restrictions to register on Instagram and TikTok, those platforms have become a place where teenagers and young adults are exposed to and seek out influences. But if you grew up watching YouTube, there's a very high likelihood that you'll continue to do so as you get older, since it offers a sense of comfort and familiarity. A place that you can visit when you're bored and just want to watch the content of someone who you knew since you were a child, or even someone that you recently spoke. We all take comfort in the familiar, whether it's content creators or watching something like The Office for the 18th time. It's like slipping into that nice, comfy sweating that you've known for years, or returning to your bed or home after being in a hotel for a home. There's nothing necessarily wrong in finding comfort in content, though. I personally rewatch some of my favorite shows all the time in books and movies, and I have a Spotify playlist with nearly 650 handpicked songs, each of which I've heard countless times, but when I'm bored or working, I'll put it on in the background and listen to them again. Familiarity is core to developing relationships with people. This can include your in-person friends, online friends, influencers, and even fictional characters that you identify with. Just look at how many videos and images and GIFs are shared with characters from movies and TV, with a caption claiming that they're amused. With regular people that we can regularly talk to and interact with, whether that is hanging out in person, a group PM, or ghost chat on Discord, or even playing online games with them. These are, by definition, actual relationships, regardless of whether you are in physical presence with these people.
They're still able to actively interact with them, become familiar, and develop genuine bonds. Some people may argue that if you've never met a friend in the flesh, then it doesn't count. But it's become evident that that simply isn't true, and the internet has facilitated relationships with people in other countries that were once extremely hard and expensive to maintain. In the early days of social networks, they were designed in such a way that the kind of content that we saw was largely from the people that we mutually agreed to be friends with. Sites like MySpace had celebrities on it, but they didn't really have any kind of engagement with audiences. Same for artists or bands. The site once served as a great way to keep up to date with new music, but other than a few promotional photos here and there, it was pretty much just a glorified website for them. There were some people who did become public figures because of MySpace. Believe it or not, makeup influencer and dumpster fire Jeffree Star, one of the biggest names in the influencer sphere, actually started out there, but it wasn't anywhere near as effective as making figures as big as him, especially compared to sites like Instagram, TikTok, etc. Same goes for Facebook. In its early days, its main function was to simply connect friends and family until they turned into the fascist propaganda machine that it is now. When Twitter came along, it gave birth to a new social media format, where rather than just using the platform to connect with friends and family, you could follow any account you wanted unless they had some kind of barrier in place, which requires giving you permission to follow them. Although traditional celebrities quickly amassed followers on Twitter and then later Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, influencers, people who are strangers to everyone and never been seen on screen before or been spoken about by much of anyone, came to fruition. As mentioned previously, there are all kinds of reasons why people follow influencers. But as more people join these new platforms, they look for someone to follow among their friends. Because of how engagement works on social media, the more a figure is engaged with, the likelier they are to be seen by people who haven't heard from them. Thanks to people sharing and liking posts, it's a